14,805 cases in the country so far. Total number of tests that have been done now over 250,000, 254,273. 14,805 been confirmed positive. 6,757 have fully recovered. And unfortunately, 260 people died, with 10 deaths in the last 24 hours. With over 600 deaths, with over 600 positive cases yesterday, and the likelihood of those to continue rising, Kenya soon will be at 15,000 cases. However, I think that one thing that the Ministry of Health is, excuse me,
bless you,
bug in my throat. Okay. One thing that the Ministry of Health is focusing on is the high numbers of people who are being discharged, released from hospital, and the number of people who have been found positive, but then are at home, so home-based care as a protocol, which now they see to be working, according to the Ministry of Health in Kenya. You don't look convinced.
So what's working?
Home-based care, according to the Ministry of Health, seems to be working.
The people are released to go home and they heal.
Or people who are found to be positive, there's no need for them to come to hospital, and are isolating at home for at least 14 days, and then they're being checked on and adhering to protocol guidelines, and then, they're tested again, and then they're found to be negative. So it's a good thing, no?
The story of working for me would be that second part of your statement. Adhering to the protocol guidelines, and we are sure that they're adhering to the protocol guidelines, and we've got information to support that. That this is what happened. We tested out of 250 people who were found to be positive, 200 were told to go into home-based care, and this is the kind of support that they received, and this is how they maintained the isolation protocols. Now, just saying that, we've looked at them after 14 days and they're fine,
it doesn't really cut it, of course.
I think there's a lot more information. Maybe they have the information, just that they have not packaged it for sharing yet. But I think the story of the home-based care, the success of home-based care would be saying that, look at this, this is what we have. We've got clusters in communities, and this is how they're managing, how the community is helping, and how home-based care is a communal thing. And the success stories, not just saying that we tested them 14 days later, we tested them, they were negative, so home-based care is working.
It's working.
Yeah.
Well, it would be interesting to see how it. I'm struggling to see if there would be an improved, attention then that is paid to home-based care. I think there's so many balls that are up in the air, other things that attention is being given to. So this is going to be one thing that is said as, all right, we did that, and on a certain level it worked. But in terms of paying attention to details, unless somebody can tell us something better, I don't see how really they're going to improve on that, unfortunately.
Probably going to have a conversation later about that.
Yeah.
And home-based care, how it's working. Do you know anybody who's on home-based care?
Yeah.
Who's gone through home-based care and how it has worked?
Right.
Clearly, because there's a lot. Other parts.
4 million cases in the United States now. 4,100,875. They realized upwards of 100,000 cases across the U.S. yesterday. And now, of course, still inching closer to deaths of 150,000. They realized 2,300 deaths across the U.S. yesterday as well. Brazil also, numbers continue to rise, now at 2,231,871. South Africa also inching closer and closer to 400,000 cases, 394,948. Mexico, yes, still there as well. 6,000 cases reported since about midnight GMT, with 790 deaths having been recorded there as well. So still remains the same in terms of numbers. I wanted to look, interestingly enough, at some of the Middle Eastern countries, whereas we saw, countries like Iran take a huge hit early on. And the numbers seem to have staved off there in Iran. 281,000, 14,000 deaths. Saudi Arabia, 258,000 cases with 2,601 deaths. Italy also seems to have staved off. We don't see the huge numbers that we were seeing, and that has remained at about 245,000 with 35 deaths. So just under 10% of the total number of cases that have been realized in Italy, then just have resulted in death, unfortunately. But then we don't see the high numbers that we were seeing before. France also was the number that, went out there very high, but that has also staved off. Germany as well, with 204,000 cases, with 9,182 deaths. So this is what we see. Now there are news bits and pieces of information that came out yesterday, and they're saying that, whereas Africa was not really recording anything in the last couple of weeks, now again, there's this sentiment that, now is the time that Africa is going to see these high numbers. Of course, with South Africa being the poster child then for this particular sentiment, that Africa now is going to start to see these high cases and high numbers of deaths because, around the world it's been experienced, and now it's Africa's turn.
Why do some people make it sound like it's a competition?
I know. It's like, okay, your turn. Tag your it. I don't know, but it just seems like that's what it is.
If you look at any disease whose prevalence reaches what you call pandemics or acquires pandemic status, they're not telling us something new here. Okay? You give it time. Remember all those activities that the Ministry of Health and the government were involved in. They were to contain the spread, to ensure that the spread doesn't get to any alarming proportions or proportions that we cannot manage. All these quarantine, isolation, these are containment measures. Okay. Now, the truth of the matter is this. Even if it was 2 people, and then the number gets to 4, the multiply effect starts taking place. Again, simple logic.
It's bound to happen. Yeah.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah.
So the issue here is not it's bound to happen. What then do you do? What do you prepare for? And I am seeing the government is already beginning to understand this. The local players, the commercial industry, the industrial industry are beginning to understand this. Stop trying to move the space that within the hospitals around. Just build new units specifically for COVID. There are people who are experts at building these things, and they don't take that long to build. No.
And there are things that you can do that would not be cost intensive.
Look, if we know that the ailments that took people to hospitals did not go away, and oftentimes there wasn't even enough space to accommodate these people who were just falling ill in the normal, if I may call it normal.
Yeah.
Okay? You throw in COVID. What did you expect?
It was bound to happen. Yeah.
China did giant hospitals.
From day one. They didn't joke around.
Yep, they built hospitals, they converted stadia. We can also see, the counties that were even being featured in the news yesterday, the counties that seem to have been prepared from the get-go on how to deal with COVID-19. Mombasa went to Technical University of Mombasa and said, this is where we're going to put up a facility.
And they did.
Let's make everything happen here. This will be a COVID facility. Machakos, going to the stadium, put up a facility at the stadium, put everything else around there. So the Machakos hospital is Hospital Kawaida, and then this is a COVID facility.
Right.
And do you hear some of these counties who are prepared, kicking a fuss about bed capacity and so forth? No.
No.
They don't.
They are prepared, and they're well prepared for this. And anyway, like you're saying, it's about time that the government is realizing this. It's about time that the private sector as well is realizing this. Aga Khan and Nairobi Hospital, from the very beginning, they set up units.
Yeah.
They understood.
They could see where it was going. Aga Khan set up the sports pavilion, decided, okay, so if we have an influx, we are going to have extra capacity, and this is where we're going to take it.
The capacities of the hospital were being tested very early, and you could see the progression.
Yep.
You set aside this portion of the hospital, it's overrun. You say, hey? You set up another area. No. This is not the way to deal with this.
This is not the way to deal with this.
Yes.
It is not. And also, the other issue of how to facilitate the hospitals, just like we were discussing yesterday. Also, hospitals are fearing. I mean, if I touch a COVID case and then My staff are not well prepared to do this. They don't have the proper PPEs. Then what am I going to have? I'm going to have many of my staff getting infected. What does that do to my staff? I have to remove a number of my staff and put them in isolation. So I'll not be able to offer services anyway. So it's they start from that point of, okay, so let's not get into that position from the very beginning. Let's not admit anybody who's seeking COVID treatment.
Right.
Let's take a look at the newspapers shortly at 6:15. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to look at the weather and then what are the headlines today, where COVID-19 billions are hidden, and other headlines and other short stories. We'll be looking at them shortly. Good morning.
...24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's cloudy in Nairobi this morning at 13 degrees. We'll see these mostly cloudy conditions through most parts of the day with highs of 24 and lows of 12. Njeri is cloudy as well at 14 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 22 and lows of 11. Nakuru is partly cloudy at 13 degrees. Also, thought to be a wet afternoon, highs of 22 and lows of 13. Eldoret at 12 degrees, clear skies for now. That'll cloud up later into rains with highs of 19 and lows of 11. It's mostly cloudy in Kisumu at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18. Mombasa at 24 degrees is partly cloudy throughout today, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Clear skies in Malindi this morning, cloudy conditions to follow later with highs of 28 and lows of 24. Kisumu is, we looked at Kisumu already. Let's take a look at Kakamega. Kakamega is mostly cloudy at 16, highs of 22 and lows of 14 with a wet afternoon in store. All right. In Kampala this morning, it's mostly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 17 with rain expected later. Dar es Salaam, clear skies at 22, partly cloudy conditions only, highs of 30 and lows of 21. Joburg this morning at 5 degrees will open up into clear skies and sunny conditions throughout the day with highs of 18 and lows of 2. It's partly cloudy in Lagos at 24 degrees, highs of 28 with cloudy conditions and rain also later. Paris at 16 degrees, clear skies, highs of 28 and lows of 15. And in London at 15 degrees, clear skies as well through most parts of the day with highs of 25 and lows of 15. And finally for now in New York, 24 degrees, clear skies at the moment, open up into partly cloudy conditions with highs of 33 and lows of 23 through the day.
20 minutes after 6. Good morning. Thank you very much for waking up to Spice FM. This is The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, and C.T. Muga. Let's take a look at newspaper headlines and what's been covered in today's dailies. I want to start off with one story that's on page 2 of the Standard, and just piggybacking on what we were discussing as we went to the break about counties and preparedness and working in the private sector. Mabati Rolling Mills has partnered with the Kiambu County government for construction of a 25 million shilling COVID-19 isolation unit in Tigoni. This unit, which is being jointly funded by the MRM and the Kiambu County's Emergency Response Fund, COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund. Oh, this is that fund. Mm-hmm. It was commissioned on Tuesday and will be completed in September. And the CEO of MRM says they're going to use the best technology in pre-engineered steel building solutions that will allow them to deliver the isolation unit in a short time. Okay. Technology exists. They're willing partners. This can be done. And it's within a short time. Commissioned mid-July to be ready in September.
So it's possible.
Yep.
Oh, it's been possible for a long time.
It's always been.
It didn't start now. We're just getting to know about it because of COVID. But for the longest time, we've had organizations in industrial area stationed there who do precisely this.
Yep.
And the beauty of these structures is this. Should you no longer need it, you can dismantle it and take it somewhere else.
Yeah, you can move it. You can move it.
It's not stuck there.
Yeah.
Well, all right then.
Muranga's the governor, Mwangi wa Iria, put up an entire ICU unit with X-bed capacity within a very short time as well.
You see, the technology isn't foreign. We have it here. It's the will.
It's the will.
Yes, it's the will. It's the will.
So, yeah, that's a positive story.
It is.
Oh, it's an extremely positive story.
Yeah, it's a positive one. Well, and also it shows you where the fund is taking its money.
Not only does it do that, but you see, what it points me to is the reluctance by very many governors to actually try and find plausible solutions. They prefer to just keep stomping the same ground they've been stomping.
Yeah.
And making the same noises, and when things go wrong, blaming the government. Because that's what it seems to be.
Yeah. Asking for money. Oh, we were not
Always
getting
asking
money on
for
time.
money.
You see, there were delays. Come on. Outside the box. Think outside the box. And see how to work with it. Other headlines.
Deserted schools turned into cattle fields and open markets. Shunned by unpaid guards, many have lost books and digital learning equipment to vandals, even as head teachers ponder what to do with tons of rotting foodstuff. That's the subline. Vandalized offices, food rotting inside locked-up stores, rusty roofs and overgrown bushes, laying a siege on classrooms already covered by inch-deep dust, debris and anthills. This is the sorry state of public schools across the country 3 months after they were closed to stem the spread of COVID-19. Some school compounds have since been turned into open-air markets. Others have been turned into open grazing grounds for villagers' livestock. With salaries of most of the guards who watch over schools' property stopped, primary and secondary school head teachers who spoke to The Standard described the security situation in the closed institutions as dire. A spot check across the country found schools that have turned into ghost institutions. In Western Nyanza, many school compounds have been converted into grazing fields and cow pens. In some cases, the deserted classrooms have become cowsheds. So one example of Amin Primary School in Seme, Kisumu County has been turned into a livestock market. Part of the school field has turned into a vaccination ground for cattle, and a number of classrooms converted into food kiosks for waiting farmers and traders.
Food kiosks for farmers and traders.
Yes. So this goes across board, right? Ebubole in Mumias East, Butere Primary School, Nakuru's Moi Primary, where 36 employees have been laid off. Some panes were missing, leaving gaping windows, and dust has covered most of the classrooms. Kenya Primary School Heads Association National Chairman Nicholas Gathemia yesterday termed the state of schools as unfortunate. It's unfortunate that most schools have had no one watching over them. If criminal minds target these institutions, there will be huge losses.
What sort of news is this exactly?
Just to let you know that because schools have closed.
What do you mean?
Schools are sacred institutions have now become other things.
No.
What are you asking?
What I'm asking is this, huh? The people who are supposedly safeguard the school are watchmen.
Yeah.
Literally all schools supposedly have watchmen.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
When you do not make arrangements for them to be paid, there will be no one to officially oversee.
Yep.
But many of these schools are within certain
They are
community.
community schools, yes.
I think you've understood where I'm going with,
even
this.
the watchmen are members of the community.
That's how they even get the jobs in the first place.
But
So-
they've been left alone,
So now,
abandoned.
you're telling us that if, say, for instance, Parliament did not meet for, say, 5 months,
Yeah.
for example, because this is sort of like the length of time schools have been completely out of. Okay?
We'll have stalls.
The chambers would be terribly
We will convert
messed.
those things into stalls.
Stalls,
Yeah.
there'll be cows grazing
Yes.
back
Selling
there.
mutumba, camera stuff.
Is that what's going to happen? Because it's quite central. The answer will be no, that won't happen.
Because
Simply because the people who work in Parliament will continuously be paid. So the question I'm asking is, when I ask what sort of news is this, what on earth did we expect? It is a facility. The bit that caught my attention this story in the morning was people who otherwise do not have residential places are now moving into schools. That was going to happen.
So,
Eric, it's not as though, by the time a story is coming out, it's not as though they moved yesterday and we're reporting it today.
yeah.
No, this has been happening over time. And if the school is part of a government school or is government property, then, so the government is telling us that they have neglected these institutions to the point where this is happening.
because they've not paid people who
Or they've done whatever it is they do, or they haven't done whatever it is they were supposed
Who
to do.
pays watchmen? It's the boards of management. Is it not?
It is the board of management. Yes. It is the board of management.
All right. Where does the money, the vote for paying watchmen, and
Fees.
it comes from fees?
comes
Yes.
from fees.
So when fees is not paid,
No.
boards have no money.
Actually, you're talking to a chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
In my position
I beg
as
you.
chairman.
Yes.
Prove yourself properly.
Yes. You think and you plan. How much money do we have?
So the boards here should be able to have,
Yes,
should have
yes,
plans.
yes. You plan. You can see where this thing is going.
You see where I'm going?
Yes. And
Before we go all the way up to government, because when you say government, mind goes to Nairobi.
let me explain to you why I say government. Usually in schools, you have rotational duties. Meaning, whether it's boarding or day, there'll be so and so will be on duty. So that should somebody go to the school is not absolutely empty. There's someone who you can talk to, someone who can. It happens all over. COVID notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
However, the moment you have COVID and then you have salary delays and salary uncertainties, that will become tricky. Okay? Now, so you're going to rely on the goodwill of the community to ensure that their school, because the people who are in that school are their children.
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you can see, for instance, that the money that we have will guarantee we're able to pay salaries until April. You need to sit long before April and have a discussion, because you have the money, you can see. We need to have a discussion with these people and say, look, this is what we can do for you. It's the same discussion that many employers had with their employees.
Yes. So this is and basically where I've been heading in my thinking is the community of sacks of grain in a school in Western Kenya. Many schools have recorded losses as food rots in the stores. This we're talking about the management of this particular school. Yes, we saw that a couple of weeks ago there was a story about head teachers and heads of schools asking the government for authority to dispose of this food.
Yeah.
All right. So this is something that just goes back into the management of the school. When you talk about security and watchmen not being able to work and therefore protect the school from vandals, we are talking about the community itself looking at a school and thinking that this school is serikali and therefore we can go and vandalize it and forget that your own children are going to come back into this same school. There's collective responsibility here. It's okay for people to go in Budalangi and stay in a school because of flooding. We always know this is what happens. Whenever you have floods,
All the time.
people will seek refuge in these institutions.
Schools or churches.
Or churches. And this has happened. So when you see people setting up tents and camp in a school, I'm okay. When I see cattle grazing in a school compound, I'm okay.
Eric,
The point
cattle,
is,
cattle graze in those compounds even when there's no
throughout.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I'm okay.
See, there's
the issue
grass.
is manage it. Just manage who's coming in and how it's going
Let
out.
me ask the question I asked again. What on earth is this story about? Because, yes, the story wants to point out to the rot that is there. However, the story that I am seeing is one of community facilities and institutions and resources being utilized in a way that nobody would have thought. Forget the vandalizing. Even before COVID, schools have been vandalized, churches have been vandalized.
Yeah.
So this story doesn't tell me that it's rampant, that it's happening all over the country and it's something that is alarming. No. There are cases of vandalism, unless I have read it incorrectly. There are cases of neglect. But if you talk about, and this is where the government comes into my story, if they're government schools, neglect.
And it's government.
This is a story that has not ended. Remember, precious talent, we started that story then.
Yeah.
And then we looked and said 5 years prior to this tragic accident, there had been a report about schools of this nature and nothing was done. Now, I'm segmenting the issues. They are not the same thing. The government has its part, the community has their part, and the school management on a daily basis have their part. How you manage it, how you plan for it. Because even with COVID, you can call committees who deal with these things and you can discuss.
Yeah.
And you don't all have to be there physically.
They can still meet.
Can be done.
All you require is 2 or 3 of you to have phones in that meeting and you can sit at a safe distance and people can have a conversation.
True.
And it can be minuted.
So this is something that should not be happening.
Yes, and whoever the author of this particular story, I'm saying, please, this tends to be a human interest in addition to the other things that I was saying. And in a time like this, the human interest ought to take this because by the time people are going to live in a school, in a compound that they know is in their own, what does it tell you? Yes, and does it tell you that it's going to come to an end? Does it tell you that this is what we need to worry about? If these are the brave ones who move first, maybe the others will do it.
Just for a minute, let's take a quick break and then continue the conversation looking at what's been covered in the dailies this morning.
All right, looking at Kitengela traffic, moving very well today, but unfortunately the fog is very low on Mombasa Road today, and this affects visibility just a little bit. Coming round though to the JKIA turnoff on Mombasa Road, it will not be too bad right around now. Now, earlier this morning there was a fire at the Savo West National Park, and they were asking for urgent assistance to put that out. And KWS and other emergency services had gotten to the area. But right around that area, there was some activity. And we'll look at what it looks like in just a short while. On Outer Ring Road, the traffic also has picked up just a little bit, trying to get into the city centre. But that will be fine, though. Kangunda Road seems to be flowing very smoothly right now. Let's look at Thika Road, inbound to the city. Not too bad at the moment either. It's still early pickings for now. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. But for so far, so good. Different parts that we're looking at. We'll also look outside of the Nairobi metropolitan area and see what that looks like as well. If you see something that we should know about, let us know. Spice of MKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
Ati, what's happening to that new ferry? Hey. All right. So, efforts to save the MV Safari ferry from sinking after it collided with another vessel were ongoing late yesterday as authorities announced that 25 people were injured in the accident. The collision occurred after the 2 billion shilling ferry, which has been in operation for only 2 months, was rammed by a smaller ferry on the Likoni Channel on Tuesday. The MV Safari took in a lot of water after the Tuesday evening accident, and salvage teams spent the night trying to siphon it out to prevent the vessel from sinking. What is this story, City? Now, this is where I come in with a question.
What I don't really understand is how a 2 billion... First of all, this 2 billion shilling ferry, what does it have? I would assume that since it's a seafaring vessel, one of the things that is taken into consideration is an incident such as the one that is being reported on page 8 of the Standard. I would assume. 2 billion also tells me it ought to be a fairly huge ferry. Why is it that the smaller vessel is not the one sinking, and why is it that the big vessel is the one which is sinking? It stands to reason. I mean, sincerely speaking, if a small vessel rams into a big vessel, which one? If I, with my Dudu vehicle, okay, you know this matchbox type vehicle that people have, ram into a lorry, the first thing I'm going to get in contact is not even the lorry, it will probably be the tires.
Right.
Okay? The lorry will more or less remain intact, but I will have to look for another vehicle and maybe body parts if I was traveling fast. Okay? So now you're telling us that you have a situation where supposedly spanking new ferry, probably the biggest we have, has a collision and is supposed to be sinking. No.
So, MV Kwale, the small, older vessel, is the one that collided into this MV Safari. It had developed mechanical problems and then started now moving towards this anchored MV Safari, hit it, and created a huge hole. That hole started bringing in water into the vessel. A gaping hole on the side which has caused water ingress, flooding the engine room. The vessel has been assisted by KPA Tag Simba to get to a safety position. And this is according to the Kenya Ferry Management.
Eric, the same sort of thinking that goes into making a ship is the same sort of thinking that goes into making a ferry. It's like a flatbed ship, really, it's flat. But the understanding that such a thing can happen and that water can indeed enter the very place that they're referring to is taken into consideration. That's why ships have parts of them that take in water and also release water.
So you're saying that this is substandard?
I'm saying it raises really very many questions. Honestly, really very many questions. That it was rammed into, that has a hole. Fine. Fine. Ships get rammed into, ships develop holes. I was going to say ships are punctured, then I realized you can't puncture steel. But They are made to be able to have an outlet where that water coming out can also be channeled out. So it doesn't just... The next story is that it was rapidly sinking. That is not the immediate story. And by the way, if it was docked, it's next to land.
It was hit so hard, it started also drifting. That's why it had to be tugged
You see,
back to safety.
the question that I'm even wondering now, you brought
Because
in
this smaller ferry, remember, it was carrying people.
yes, and
right?
it seemed to have lost control.
It lost control, so it's coming full steam towards this one. It has lost steering control,
It has.
but the
and
engine is still running.
all that we've
And it comes
understood.
and
Let them explain further. This story doesn't make sense to me. When something like a ferry costs the amount of money that this one has cost,
We don't expect it to have this kind of a problem.
not
No.
really.
Not
and
so
not
soon.
so soon in the game.
No, not even soon. Not even
Not at
soon.
all. After
These are not
spending that
vessels that
amount of
are
money-
they don't have a shelf life of 5-6 years. It's 20 years.
It's not a kid's toy, eh?
It's 15 years. It's 30 years. That's the lifespan these things have. And remember, they're applying
See,
salty water. They're made of steel.
City is saying basically that if you buy a brand new car from one of these
Dealer.
dealers,
So long as Kenya ferry services are not the middlemen, yes.
if it gets onto the road, even if it has an accident, it cannot be a write-off.
The
So
analogy,
soon after you took it from,
the analogy,
Showroom.
the analogy makes sense, Eric, insofar as you are talking about vehicles, but this is a seafaring vehicle. It works. It moves in water. Water. That is the surface on which it moves, and that is the surface that can cause it the biggest problems. Because if it stops floating in water, then it will sink. So I would assume that when these things are built, that is taken into consideration. This is really what I'm trying to say. Because it plies, it displaces water. It does that every day. That's what it does. Yes. And there's a likelihood, forget being rammed into. What if something else happens and something causes a hole in the ferry? Anything can happen. This is the
Right.
sea.
yeah. The reason why it has not sunk yet is because all those things that have been put into consideration are in effect.
No, the reason why it hasn't sunk is because the tugboat were fast, they were on the scene, and they towed it to a place where it can quietly and safely.
And those are the considerations.
No. The tugboat is a different entity, Chief.
Completely.
Those are the considerations.
The accompaniment of the
Had you
bomb.
told me that it kickstarted the ferry and started moving to a safety, I would say, okay. But it was towed.
Yeah.
I even have to ask the
entered
question,
the engine
okay.
room, CT.
Eric,
So
even if it enters the engine room, the engines won't shut down immediately. They don't. This is a seafaring vehicle, man.
It will take some time before all of that happens.
Yes.
Before the imminent shutdown.
Okay.
All right. Well, as the ferry stutters to life or death, it seems that government offices will also come to a halt because the threat of COVID-19 has become ever more real. Hundreds of civil servants, some of them holders of critical offices, have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past few weeks, causing panic in Parliament, the judiciary, ministries and parastatals. Among these infected are highly ranking officers in the Public Service Commission, a senior officer in the ICT Ministry, 4 MPs and 50 Parliament staff. The PSC offices were closed after a commissioner got infected. And all staff will take the test next week. Continuing to look at that story, though, in terms of what is going to be done, we heard yesterday that the Makadara law courts will also be closed. We see that the Milimani law courts will be closed on Friday for some, I don't want to say fumigation because that's not what it is, some hygiene activities, let's call it that.
Sterilization.
There you go. It's going to take place on Saturday, and then they will resume dealings on Monday. But we already know that because of skeleton staff due to COVID, that they were working more on an online kind of platform, which was causing headaches of nightmarish proportions for very many people because the system then was slow. People were not able to log and file things, and very few cases which were then tagged as important or, absolutely urgent is what we're being dealt with. So with a backlog already, with the current system and the way things are in place, it means that there's going to be further delay in the hearing and attention of cases into the years is what is being said. It's going to take a long time to get out of this. And it doesn't help either that talks are being had about how to then shut down operations completely, at least for a certain period of time. So we already know that there were infections in State House, and that State House then now closed, and only certain people were then allowed in and out. The public offices that have been hardest hit by the virus, like we said, include Parliament, the courts, the ICT Ministry, the National Treasury, prisons, and the Public Service Commission. At the Treasury, 20% of the staff have contracted the virus, while 15 PSC staff had tested positive by the 1st of July. Jolted, the government will on the 27th of July, which is in a couple of days, launch mass targeted testing of all the staff as it seeks to establish the extent of spread of the disease, I beg your pardon. So on Saturday, all public offices at Teleposter Towers were fumigated, as were those in Uchumi House. Meanwhile, the Makadara Law Courts, as we said yesterday, suspended operations for 14 days, and the Chief Registrar, Anne Amadi, ordered the station closed and directed magistrates and staff to proceed on self-quarantine. And the court premises will be disinfected while they are all away. The Milimani courts will shut down on Friday to allow fumigation on Saturday. Operations will resume on Monday, and it's possible that even after that, they will also go on another 14-day suspension for then staff to go on quarantine.
What would be a better, more effective and efficient way of still offering government services and keeping the staff safe?
This is the thing. The option that seems to offer itself with the most turnaround time still is the online option. Unfortunately, the system is clogged, it's slow, it's something that has not been used before. Whether you need to, simple things, whether you need to increase the bandwidth, whether you need to then have an easy to use portal, whatever it is, because that's what's being done now. People who have logged cases, for example, a month ago, have not even received a call back or in terms of a reference, from the judiciary, because the system is slow. It would seem that the online was the best, because what you're trying to do then is avoid contact. It would seem that online services would be the way to go. It's something that is done regularly in other countries. Yep. Right? Even without COVID, it's something that, the system allows you to log, register online. Cases are heard sometimes even without face-to-face.
Because we're talking about very many government agencies and even parastatals. In fact, if we just go into the parastatals, right? Think about pick any parastatal, Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Ports, or even the regional development bodies, and the work that they do. Can't they immediately just switch and go online?
That's the problem. You can't do it immediately. You can't do that. There's so many things that would need to have been put in place. When you even want to look at things like digitization of certain offices, has not happened until now. So then how are you suddenly going to shift? Because there's certain things that you need in terms of documentation, and you had not digitized prior to that. Then suddenly you want to go online. You see that there's so many kinks, because, a certain file is needed. You got to go get the manual file, and you know that this certain thing is online. How are you going to correlate the two? How will you reconcile? You have a hard paper. You have a hard copy file, right? The process now is online. Then now you're going to have to start logging all of that information so that you can attack. Just thinking about it gives you a headache, right? So when there was calls for digitization, for example, in the Lands Ministry many years ago, which, by the way, is still an ongoing process. Yeah. If things like that had happened, then what you're saying in terms of then switching would have been much easier. But here we are where, you think of the filing of a case in court. How much documentation, is presented? We saw the other day when the governor for Kirinyaga was presenting her evidence. How many boxes of material were presented just in Senate, So how are you going to do that in a system which is still very hard copy paper oriented?
I think there are very many cases where, it's extreme, but also there are very many other offices where this should be easy and should be possible. There's some services there's some services that are not customer facing. It's work that just needs to happen in the background. People, yes. Right? So they should be able to find ways of just working from home, just facilitate the workers, let them work from home. Okoh. This is the situation in the Philippines. We are looking at these headlines. Also, we're looking at what's happening. This is just reflecting on the conversations in Kenya, in East Africa, and the world.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Remember, the live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke. You can watch this show as well on YouTube. We are live streaming there. Our channel is Spice FM KE. Go to Facebook, look for the page, Spice FM KE, like the page, and you also watch the show.
Spice up your life.
Follow us, Spice FM KE. You'll also be able to watch the show. You can contribute to all the conversations on Instagram as well, Spice FM KE, or you can call in 0719-012-600. This is Kenya.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
No. We had moved there.
No, I'm
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
safe way of moving from the island to the mainland and vice versa. Remember, these ferries that we have came to the fore when there was a lady whose car slid off,
Yeah.
went to the sea, and she and her daughter passed away. That was the MV Harambe.
Yeah.
And there were other stories, somebody jumping off. Our ferries have had issues. We've had stories of ferries spiraling in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the channel, simply because something happened. We've had stories of them being ill-maintained. But of interest, the DPP was going across the ferry, going to attend a wedding in the South Coast. And this very same ferry, he declined to board it. He said, leaking roof. This state.
I'm not boarding.
No,
Literally.
I'm not boarding. This ferry doesn't. Now, the debates around our ferries have gone on for a very long time. Then we have 2 billion. 2 billion. Meaning if it was 200 million, 10 of them.
Okay.
Okay?
Just to put it into perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
And it is how many months old?
2.5.
Let's start by why had it docked? Why was it not moving? Why was it not being used? Okay? It's not clear.
Was it in a state of disuse?
Usually, ferries, depending
Was
on
it
the
not
peak
at the
hours.
stage?
No.
Haikuwa kwa shimo inangojea watu?
Hapana.
Because
ferries don't work like that, Eric. What happens is,
because where
if you
where
load
it was
one,
colliding with this one
by the way,
is at the same place where
no,
this one was coming to.
it's not quite the same place. There are two ramps to
Yep.
the ferry, but they dock on the side. Now, if it is peak hours and people are moving back and forth, as the other one loads, so does this one.
Yeah.
So they sort of like cross somewhere in between. Okay? Now, if we're saying it wasn't peak hours, then it's understandable one ferry was functioning and this other one was docked on one side. Because it isn't as though they're using the same place for loading passengers and
Yep.
vehicles.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't even my beef. My beef is simply this. When a ferry costs that amount of money, and yet we have ferries that were bought in 1990 and they were second hand, MV Nyayo, this MV Harambe, second hand. And they have stood the test of time. The test of time has also included mismanagement, ill repairs, and there's nothing disastrous that has happened. We even had collisions. This is not the first time we're having a collision.
All right. So when you have collisions, do they get such kind of gaping holes? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
Actually,
Is this a disastrous situation?
It's a
Sati?
disastrous,
because you're making
and
it sound like
I am making it
this-
I'm making it into a hill
this
and a mountain.
ferry has capsized.
It's probably substandard. That's where I'm going with my discussion. Someone needs to explain how it is such an expensive ferry, upon being rammed into. By the time a ferry is approaching docking, it's slowing down. It's not moving at full speed.
No.
If they met in the middle of the channel, I would understand. I would say full speed. It's slowing down.
Yes.
But this one lost control. So we understand. All these questions must be answered. This report has just sparked off something, and I'm going to continue asking this question. You know why? If that ferry had actually been damaged and there were people in it, and you're told it is sinking, can you imagine the sort of situation we would have? He would just be told only 25 people were injured. 25 people is a lot of people.
25 people is 25 people too many for such a vessel that's supposed to be carrying and ensuring that you're protected. Of course, that's a problem. So if not that it's excusable, but if this thing was maybe 3-4 years old, then maybe you would ask and say, all right, maybe it had gone through the motions and it was a little bit old, but come on, 2.5 months, got to ask the questions. They have to pop up.
I told you
the same
guys,
question that
just
you will ask if a
simply
plane
because
crashes.
you have just bought a car does not mean that it is immune to accidents. City, as we come to the top of the hour, today's proverb.
There is no shortcut to the top of a palm tree. Kuna short kwa kujenga ferry. There is no shortcut
To the
to the top of a
palm tree.
Yes. You can't just arrive at the top of the palm tree. You have to climb up that bark. You have to climb up the trunk.
Have you seen those guys climbing that thing?
You can catapult
It's
yourself.
fantastic. It's amazing to see.
Eric,
And it's
Eric,
Well,
I would
good
urge-
morning.
Just sweating.
It
I
is
would-
7 o'clock.
I would urge you to
okay,
limit
okay,
your
okay.
All right, not much traffic on Mombasa Road this morning. It's moving along ever so slowly, but at least you're not getting stuck all the way from the turnoff from Athi River, Kitangela, all the way down to Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Shouldn't have too much of an issue at this time. We can't promise that that's going to be the state of things forever. It's probably going to change in about half hour or so. So if you're not out, you might want to make a quick dash for it or wait it out. All right, getting into the CBD. From industrial area, it's going to take a little bit of time because it's already clogging up there from Landis Road, Bunyala Road as well, then trying to join the roundabout as you get to the Nyayo Stadium area and then onto Huru Highway. That's also building up as we see it. Thika Road coming out then into the CBD, building up as well right around Survey. The service lanes, however, are open. Those can be used. All bypasses from the eastern to the southern to the Red Hill bypass. You should be fine this morning to be able to use those. It's a longer route, but you don't have to wait. Spice of MKE also, let us know if there's anything you see. If you're quiet, then we know that traffic is good wherever you are.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room,
2.5 minutes
a place
after
for
7,
hard
it's the
truths,
Situation Room,
debates,
Kenya's
and
biggest
elevated...
station, broadcasting in Nairobi. We are on 94.4. If you go to Mombasa, you'll just tune to 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Eldoret 96.7, in Nakuru 96.0, in Malindi 97.7, Nyeri 90.9. City Muga, how did you get here?
How did we get here, really? I mean, the question I'm asking me
It's
seems
like one of
simple.
those National Geographic.
No, it's not.
On the back of a camel, through the desert and over the dunes. Okay,
It isn't a BBC documentary, or Deutsche Welle documentary, or Sky TV documentary, or CNN documentary. I'm simply asking, how did we as a country, how did we as Kenyans get to a point where we normalized ill and we gave the impression that we live so easily with it? How did we get to a point where it seems very normal for huge amounts to be lost from government coffers, and it's in the papers every other day, and you would expect wholesale condemnation, but that's not what you hear. What you hear is we are being picked on. It's not this amount. In fact, it was less. And the sums you talk about are in the billions, not even the millions. Me, this billion things, it hasn't quite resonated. I know there are 9 zeros, but still, it's not something that my mind grasps easily. It took me so much time to even understand a million. Now, billion.
Now it's billion.
Yes. But then the spin-off from this is when you look at services that the government is supposed to provide, the excuses surpass what you often see. And sometimes the efforts that the government makes are actually lost in the din of the noise around it. So you actually think nothing is being done, yet something is being done. I mean, I'm asking, how did we get here? What is it that we did, or what was done on our behalf, or what did we accept to let go by to the point where this is where we are? How is it that we are a country where anyone who's in leadership is actually treated, the first port of call, you're treated with mistrust. Very rarely does anything you say very rarely is it believed 100%. Very rarely is it believed in some cases at all. And yet these are people that we elected. I am asking, how on earth did we get here? Look at how we are chasing our tail around COVID. Now, the excuse that is used is that everyone around the world is chasing their tail. True, but some are approaching catching it, meaning there's sanity to what they're doing, over a period of time, hours every time you think there's sanity, something else happens and you sort of like scratch your head and say, okay, now let's see how this one plays out. And that's supposed to be a very decent consideration. How did we get to this position where hope is dimmed and our entire perspective is dismal? So instead of being the most hopeful nation as we were described by the Times magazine in 2002, we are slowly and very definitely becoming a very hopeless lot of people.
How did we become such a skeptical society?
Yes. How? What happens to us?
I move it. It's not just about government. It's about everything.
Why I always bring
It's
the
about
government into
everything in
conversation.
life. In this society, the first thing that somebody will, respond to you with is with a no, with absolutely no way. It's with the question marks.
I mean, even look at when COVID. I mean, I can hear what you're saying, Eric, because when the first case of COVID came out on the 13th of March, what did people say? By that evening, everybody was saying, huh.
It's about World Bank money.
And then there was suddenly World Bank money. It was skewed towards that. There's no COVID, number one. It just meant that the government was trying to get money. When an individual, for example, is caught out doing something that is not right, and that individual seems to be in a position of power or influence, what is the first thing Kenyans are going to say?
They'll get off.
You'll get off. We see these high-level cases, and people are like, this one is not going to happen. We see governors who are being taken before the assembly and then taken before Senate, and they say, this one is very close to the center of power, so nothing is going to happen to them. We know it's the order of the day. Look at it when it happens to somebody who steals a chicken. Be given a sentence of a year because he stole a chicken. But let an individual who is in a position of influence be then accused of stealing millions. The chances of them going anywhere are zero.
Children killing each other over avocado.
There you go.
Children
a young boy at
killing
9 years old is in police custody.
Children killing each other over grazing land.
So do you blame Kenyans for the mentality that they have when
Yes.
they see? Hold on. When they see something like this, happening, and they say, "Well, you know what? Look at what's happening around us. What do you expect?" There's a divide, a clear-cut divide between those in a position of power and influence and the rest of you Kenyans.
We are very quick to pick on those in positions of power because it's easier for us to point a finger. It's easier for us to identify a common enemy and throw stones at that common enemy. It's very easy for us. But I keep saying, even not looking inward, and that's why I said, how did we as Kenyans become such a skeptical society? Cynical. Today, C.T. Muga, let's say, is working as a headmaster in a private school somewhere, and then he decides, you know what, I want to venture into business. I'm going to quit my job. What are his neighbors going to say?
He's schooly. This man has eaten the school to the ground.
Huyu amefutwa kazi. It's the whole story of going into business. He lost his job. That's the first thing that people are going to say. You lost your job. Anything that you do, you start rising in your, in
place of work.
People start asking, who does he know?
Yes.
Who has he spoken to?
Who has he spoken to? How is he doing this?
Or who has she slept with?
Yeah.
These are the
with?
questions that are being asked. Yeah.
And this is not just about government. So when it comes to government, it's very easy because government is not going to question you. The government is not going to push back. It's very easy for all of us to just throw stones at government and say, look, people are going to go walk scot-free. People are going to do this and the other. You feel that, it's easy for us to say that.
But hasn't it come from somewhere? Because look at the other side of it as well.
It comes from our homes. It comes from our society. That's what I'm saying.
But by the time you are saying something like that this individual is going to walk scot-free, is that sentiment not from the fact that somebody has walked scot-free before?
Yes.
Yes.
But
So now
has everybody walked scot-free?
No, but like I said, look at it like we said yesterday. What do people do? Which is your natural inclination, is that you're going to pick the very few cases, right, that would be able to fuel your anger or fuel your point or fuel your justification. The truth is that the majority of the others they don't fall there. But it's easier for you to pick on this thing, and it's just human nature. It's not a Kenyan thing, it's global. It's human nature. You'll pick on the thing that is going to be able to fuel your justification.
Unless it's something bizarre like the cases where children have died due to some disagreement or the other over something or the other, and it hits the national news, it's actually localized. But you see, why it is easy to pick on the government and political leaders and government leaders is because whatever happens, it's what is in our face on a daily basis. And two, it affects and influences the lives of very many other people. Like now, for instance, if you look at page 9 of the papers, governors tell Yatani to release 30 billion now. Right. Yatani should release 30 billion for June. The question is, this stalemate that we have in the Senate, does it also influence this 30 billion? Or is this 30 billion separate from
a
it?
different kind of
is
money?
It money that can just be released even before they've arrived at a formula?
So that they
sharing?
can sort out issues for June.
I'm asking because I honestly don't know. Okay? But if you listen to the arguments that they're now putting forward.
The 30 billion for June has nothing to do with what's happening at the Senate. What's happening at the Senate is for a new financial year that begins in July. So 30 billion for June is for the previous financial year. Imagine that.
So it's for the previous financial year. So where does COVID come in? Because they've mentioned COVID also. That it is, it's not just salaries, it's hampering their fight against COVID.
Yeah, because they don't have the resources.
They never have the resources, even when they're given resources.
See now?
But I'm merely stating a fact. This is June, 1 month. And the previous months, this is not being negative. This is just asking. We've got the figures. As from the beginning of the week, we're given figures of how much money, not the government is planning to spend, but the government has spent. Yes. It can't be that everything that involves money, you must throw in COVID. There was the basic managing the health services that these counties have. It's been a story, and then another story, and then another story.
So then with that you talk about being continuous stories of the same.
Yes.
Can you blame individuals or can you blame the general psyche that is around Kenyans at this point to be cynical? Can you blame them then for being cynical?
Before COVID, you'd go to hospital, you would not be able to get the treatment you anticipated from a government hospital. And yet, you read in the same papers that the government has done this, has done this. Then before long, KEMSA will come up, you'll know, KEMSA have drugs which are almost expiring. It's one horrible story after another. You're thinking, God.
So what does that do to the psyche of Kenyans?
Yes.
So do you then blame them for being cynical if they hear things like this over and over and over again?
I'm actually questioning this. There are elements of cynicism, and Eric does have a valid point. But is it always all cynicism? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's factual, but we don't like to look at these things. And if we do, someone must be blamed. So the culture of blame, that's a different story, but it's there. It can't be that this actually happened. No. That's not quite the story. No. And no here is a sentence. No. It can't be this. Because, then the because comes in. You have the MES mess that has been going on. It's a discussion. Now, the former AG, Nduh Okoh, has proceeded to throw further. He had thrown under the bus before, Mr. James Macharia, who was then CS. But that Department of Government had said from the very beginning, these people concluded their deal, then brought it to us to sign. He has said it repeatedly. He didn't say it today. So, why I keep talking, and I will talk and go back to health, my friend. This is the very heartthrob of the people of the country. If monies are being spent and it's supposed to be spent so that people get well and they get services, and those services are what we're always complaining about, then you have to pause and ask, what on earth is going on? You really have to ask. Hence my question, how on earth did we get here?
My attempt at answering that question is simple. We start from ourselves. If we always start from the other person, then we're not going to get there. How did
explain your point,
we
Eric.
get here has to start with how did I get here?
Eric, please explain your point. I think you're onto something, but explain it.
How did I get here is the main part. How did I get here? What kind of decisions have I made? What kind of outlook do I have? Do I have all the information, for example, that I need? Am I consuming information from headlines?
Or have I sought to find the information that I might need?
Because constantly we will throw stones. Like now we'll talk about the MES. We'll talk about the mess that is MES and the ferry and everything else. But how much information do we have that can basically say we are making now a decision that no. You know what? This is what the problem is. We will get big, unless we do that, we'll get to a point where we're looking at James Macharia. James Macharia is from Murang'a County, and therefore people from Murang'a are now being targeted. And we'll come together as people from Murang'a and say, no, what is this that Muhammad Ali is saying about our James Macharia? He's done a stellar job. Look at the roads. Look at houses. Look at infrastructure. He's done a stellar job. but we'll forget to go and ask those questions. People today, some people are going to look at Gedho Muigai coming against James Macharia.
But is it that people forget?
This is what people will look at. If we don't go back to ourselves, how did I get here? How did I get to a point where I look at it, I look at things, just from headline and don't go deeper into it, and I do not even question myself.
I don't think it's that people. I mean, I'm looking at the Kenyan atmosphere or climate when it comes to calling out. I don't think that it's that people forget. I think that certain things have happened, and I think that complacency kicks in, whereby you see certain things happening over time, and then it just becomes accepted as a status quo. And all right, this is what is going to happen anyway. However, I do see that there is an issue when it comes to calling things out and doing it repetitively. And those who do call it out are either seen in some quarters as pariahs, and so that is the label that they've been given, or activists, and that label stays with them. But nobody seems to really want to get uncomfortable. And when I say uncomfortable, that means, all right, constantly saying, this is wrong, it cannot continue this way. If that happens, you're a loudmouth, or you're too aggressive, or you are too abrasive, this, that, the other thing. I think people are very comfortable.
With all that.
To an extent, I would agree with you that people are comfortable with the way things are.
People are not looking inward.
But why do you say they're comfortable?
Because
People are not looking inward.
If you're resigned to something, doesn't mean you're comfortable.
Well, if you're
It's like,
resigned,
if you've given up, doesn't mean you're comfortable.
you've thrown your hands up, so you actually think that there's no way out. Whereas
But
they
are you
could be, but
comfortable?
you're not ready to test it.
You're not comfortable. You also don't know that you're not comfortable. What you just know is that you have someone to blame.
That's what I'm saying.
That is
so
the
now
issue.
that is your outlet.
And
Someone to
the
blame
thing
is
of
actually an outlet.
Someone to blame, that is not the problem. The problem starts with you. That's my point. You can easily, because like you're saying that people don't point out ills. That's what people do on a daily basis in Kenya. Every day, people will tell you what's going wrong in this country. We are very good at that.
No. To whom?
What's going
To each
wrong?
other.
Exactly.
Yes.
To each other. It's me to you. And then when you have an opportunity maybe to talk to an individual or to raise issues, it's Mheshimiwa. You see? You're bringing out the issues to amongst yourselves. And so that's it.
This is what I'm saying. We are very good at that. We are very good at pointing out problems with each other.
Whereby we're not going to make any impact.
We are not. You know why we're doing that? It's because we're looking out there. We're looking for someone to blame.
This is what I've just
It
said.
is not because we're looking for a solution. And the
Exactly.
solution is not because we also understand where our problem
But
is.
what you're saying
We're saying the same
do I
thing.
hear you correctly?
We're saying the same
are
thing.
the problem. How did we get here? We were ourselves
Eric,
here.
you're saying we have allowed ourselves to get here.
Yes. 18 minutes after 7, let's take a look at the weather.
Shut up. Okay, let's look at how the weather situation may have changed or remained the same. Looking at Nairobi, mostly cloudy conditions at 14 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 12. In Njeri, it's cloudy at 14 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 12, with rainy conditions later on. In Nakuru, partly cloudy, 13 degrees. We'll see a high of 22 and lows of 12 and likely to be a wet afternoon. In Eldoret, clear skies at 12 degrees, highs of 19 and lows of 11. In Kisumu, today is mostly cloudy, highs of 26 and lows of 18. Kakamega, mostly cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 14, with rain expected in most parts of the city. In Mombasa, it's partly cloudy, 24 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Take a look then into Malindi, where it's clear skies, mostly sunny conditions, 25, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Taking a look then into Kampala, partly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18, with showers expected later. Dar es Salaam is partly cloudy, 21 degrees, highs of 30 and lows of 21. In Joburg, it's clear skies this morning at 5 degrees, highs of 18 and lows of 2. And finally, for now, in Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 24 degrees. It's going to be a wet afternoon, highs of 28 and lows of 23.
Just 2 minutes after 7 o'clock, the situation room. The conversation continues. Sitting is asking this morning, how did we get here? Where is here?
How did we get to be such a gullible lot, if I'm to follow your argument and to agree with you? How did we get to a point where people whom we are supposed to elect, who often are, by and large, very sincere people when they start off, and then the politics of the day and the time and the region gets hold of them, and then they become beady-eyed, short-sighted, greedy individuals who will use any tool at their disposal to simply get elected. And as we gulp it all up, we believe it and we act on it. We do this all the time. You have an election, it's being fought, you will paint your political opponent in the worst possible light. Now, you have a way of resonating, resigning to it, making it work when you now need to agree, because it suits your political purposes. But what about the gullible lot? Again, Eric, your argument? Us. The gullible lot whom you sold this story of a demon in human form. Who will cause you untold, you think you've seen problems. Should this person get to the helm, whoa, you will see things that have never been seen on this planet. How do you go back to them and tell them, Actually, it's not quite like that. You know, this politics sometimes. How did you get to be so gullible? Because now I moved from the politician. Them, they're plying their trade. How did we get to be so gullible?
I'd like to understand, though, in this point, gullible of what exactly?
Easy to convince, easy to be moved around, easy to be manipulated.
That if you see, because it seems to be the other side of it, that people are actually not gullible. That people will see something and it is not the case. That you see what I'm saying? Like when we and it's actually not
carry on.
Yeah, and it is not the case of what they actually see. So and just like we gave the example of there's COVID. Kenyans say there is no COVID because what we know is that somebody somewhere wants to steal money that is coming from the World Bank. Not gullible. We see somebody being arraigned in court over corruption charges. Kenyans say this one will not go anywhere. Not gullible. We see that somebody of lower financial or, whatever status gets arrested or is then charged with a lower crime, whatever you want to look at it as. And in that case, you say, here, a problem. Because had they been a person of different stature, then they would have been let go or let free. So for me, it looks like the total different side of the coin. Because then Kenyans, in that case, this is it, and you don't believe what you see.
Cynical.
You don't believe what you see.
You know, all those things that you're saying, they're all subjective. And you'll find two competing arguments about the same issue. talk about corruption and talk about a specific individual who's being accused of corruption, or a specific organization that's being said that this is very highly corrupt, there will not be unanimity on that issue that there is corruption here. It's going to
so
be
you're saying there's some
sharply
Kenyans
divided.
so you're saying that there's some Kenyans who believe that there's no corruption in Kenya?
No.
Or in certain
no,
cases,
no.
or that in certain cases they look at this and they say this is actually not corruption.
Kenyans
it is
believe there
something
is
else.
corruption. The definition of corruption changes every day. All right? And that's where the thing is. I will not believe there's corruption here, and I'll believe there's corruption here.
When it suits
Exactly. It's
you.
just cynicism and seeing, okay, so this one, now, yes. Because, you see, just going back to what Siti was saying as well, in terms of how do we become so gullible. It's impossible. I refuse to accept that it's possible that a population of a majority will be gullible and be confused by a population of a minority. And this is a minority that goes. So you participate in bringing these minority people into government, into running government. And then when they get in there, immediately you turn and start saying, look, he's become corrupt. And they come back to you 5 years later and you elect them back, or you pick on somebody else and you put them back in there. And you sit back and say, look, they've become corrupt.
In fact, the other person was better.
The other person was better. This one is...
By the way, here better, it's not that this person did more. This one stole less. Or was associated with less theft. Is that not a nicer way of putting it? You see, the gullibility focuses on our politics, if you ask me. And that is what influences our well-being and our day-to-day managing of our lives.
When you talk about the politics, then it becomes then the individual.
When the energy we put into politics more or less determines a lot of this, because the energy you put into politics gives you certain leaders. The gullibility enables those leaders to actually understand and believe what they can get away with. Amidst all this, there are politicians who one could even argue and say are idealistic and have even attempted to live by their idealism. But this discussion is not about grand theft, which is glaring in your face. No. It's where it starts. There are people today in Kenya who will tell you it is wrong for you to go and rob a bank. Wrong. But there is nothing wrong if you give a policeman 200 shillings.
Okay.
That one is just an understanding. Meaning they've organized it in their mind. Now this one is just a business and a transaction to ease some discomfort that has come my way. And this 200 shillings is a facilitation fee.
Compartmentalization.
Yes. So, and this will be a church abiding, even a person of integrity within the community. But even when you're having the conversation, they will tell you, but no, did you actually speak to that policeman properly? Or did you speak to that KRA person properly? And this is a person who will tell you, no, you must abide by the law. You cannot break the law. That's what I am actually referring to. When did we become so duplicitous? Because that's what leads to the bigger issues that we keep looking at. Because all these leaders begin somewhere. They're not. You don't wake up today and you begin a job here, you move here, you are good at it. And usually there are people, if you look at their track record, they were actually very good at the things they did.
Right.
Now you may not like it, you may think so-and-so was a tout. He must have been a good tout. Say, but this one was just a cooperative man. He was good at what he did. These are people who excelled. You may not like what they excelled in, but they are people who caught the attentions of those who might put them in those positions, and they felt this is the right person to put in. Yes, but the focus was the public. It always is the public. And this is where perhaps, Eric, I was thinking about this matter of yours, and this is where I think your point comes in, at least in my mind it does, where you say, no, it's not them, it's us, it's you, it's the individual. Because I'm saying, must leadership always, when we were discussing it, must we always gravitate around political leaders or government leaders? Why don't we start with leadership where it actually begins?
Exactly.
In your own home.
Yes, this is it. Yes. Same page. Now we can turn that page. Same page. Nduh, are you there? We're on page 30.
And
are you?
Yes, and this is not a male-dominated conversation where leadership is the man. No. Even women have leadership roles in their families.
Yes.
So now
Well, look, as the basic,
Sorry, not even women. Women also.
as well. All right. The basic,
Even women.
the basic unit of society, right, is the individual. Individuals then now make up families.
Yes.
Families then make up community. Community makes up society, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, if we're going, I mean, can we hear a hallelujah moment at this point? Because it seems that at that point, now if we get granular, we're all getting to the same point where you say it starts with you as an individual. Because then wherever you go in your spheres of influence, if you've got it right with yourself as an individual, then you get to the point where you're getting it right with your family, you're getting it right in your office, you're getting it right in your position, whether it be
In
a
your
leadership
day-to-day
position,
life.
in your day-to-day life. So if you get to the point of government leadership, you're also getting it right there.
Yeah.
So it has gone wrong then with individuals' attitudes. From
Let's
the
take a
very
break.
beginning.
Let's take a break. 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. We'll also be opening up the phone line so you can contribute to this conversation as well. 0719 012 600. What's happening on the roads? Good morning.
All right, so as promised, it's looking a little bit crazy on Mombasa Road. We know that was going to happen, and all the way then from the SGR and leading then towards General Motors, that has clogged up. It's moving very, very slowly right about now, but it's expected. Thika Road from Roysambu to Roiro is very, very clear this morning. There's a makeshift barrier right around Roiro, so you're going to have to slow down when you get to that. And there are also cops at the barrier, so you don't want to fly over that either. Uhuru Highway is slow. It's moving. We know that Mombasa Road inbound is also moving, albeit slow, but it's moving anyway. So we're not going to have too many problems there. A little bit of a clog up around the industrial area. The roads have opened though, so you shouldn't be there for too long and it shouldn't be too painful. All right. So it's a good Thursday is what it looks like. Spice FMKE. Let us know what you see and we'll keep it moving this morning.
How did we get here? 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. That's the conversation we're having, and I'd like you to join the conversation. Social media, Spice FM, KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and by calling in 0719 600. And City has raised that very good point. I mean, we are at a point where we see things happening. Everything seems to have a blot somewhere. Government, local authorities, that's the counties, from all forms of public service. People whom we entrust with serving us are not serving us. Things that we expect to be going right so we can all develop ourselves and grow as a community, as a country, seem to be, taking wrong turns. Every time you blink, a wrong turn has been taken. How did we get here? And the argument that I'm preferring is we got here because we as individuals got to ourselves to this point. We became too individualistic. You get to a point just before you come in City.
No, I would say and materialistic.
And materialistic, yes. And you get to a point where it's all about me and what is in it for me. And if I have a reason why I can say that I'm not where I am, I'll pass on the blame and say, you know what, it's because I could have been, were it not for this government just doing so many things, I would be a billionaire by now. That was my plan all along. But now, look, these guys, look at what they've done. And tomorrow, I'm looking for an opportunity to meet with one of those Mweshimiwa so we can sit down and say, "Hii pesa ya COVID." I have a guy who can supply beds to hospitals. How can how can we participate? And I'll say that, at least I'm contributing to nationhood. I'm not doing anything wrong. I shall participate in an open tender process. I just have the lowest tender. I'm guaranteed I'll have the lowest bid and I'll get the job. We are too individualistic and then we try to pass on the blame to somebody else. When we complain about corruption and yet we do not feel as if corruption is bad enough so that we refuse to have corruption within our spheres, we are a problem.
Actually, we compromise. We don't claim that we're compromising, but we accommodate corruption that we are comfortable with. Yet, we are quick to blame others who are probably doing exactly the same thing as we are. You know, I even got to thinking that maybe things were always like this. It is me who didn't see it. Then I thought back to the time when I was a child. I was a child at some point. Yes, I was.
Got it.
And
your memory can go that far.
Actually, I remember things when I was much younger. I remember with great clarity. But Eric, when I say I was born in the previous century, I do not mean at the beginning of the previous century. Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
Oh, Jomo was still 70.
You know, that guy's age was never really certain. He could even have been 60.
He was 70 for a while.
70 for a while. Then he also knew how to be 80 for a while.
Yes.
Yes. Now, when I think back, I honestly can think back to a time when all the things we seem to talk about as not being proper within government were proper. Maybe it's a child's memory, but people went to hospital, government hospitals, and got treated.
Yes.
You didn't buy medicine. You actually went and you came back. This one even started happening when I was now in secondary school, and you could argue my understanding was better. And I saw the same thing. You'd be taken to a government hospital from school. If you're unwell, they had a sanatorium, a clinic, but they would take you to a hospital. And you'd queue, you'd get treated, and you'd go.
You'd go home.
As simple as that.
People would get up and go to work and focus on doing
The work.
job,
Their job.
right? I remember having conversations with my late father-in-law, and he used to work in the old colonial government. Then he worked at Kenya Railways. At that point when it was East African Railways and Harbours, when he was working for the railway, he'd tell you about a point when he was a station manager at some
Really
station
remote place.
somewhere beyond Molo or some, I don't know called what. The train is expected to arrive at 2:30 a.m.
Haki, it arrives.
a.m. It arrives at 2:30 a.m. And you as a station manager, there's something that you're supposed to do to ensure that that train moves past your station smoothly. Go, run, pass on something called a key, then you go and insert that key and turn it on time.
So
and
that
it's supposed to be within that perimeter
Is
area
that a
of your
window?
station for 2 minutes or so. If it goes to 3 minutes, you have questions to answer. And you also feel the pride is, I never, not even once, delayed the train. That is the pride. Not at that time we realized that there was so much land on this side. We bought land around there. That's how come I got. No. The point of his pride is, for
doing
those
his job
years
well.
that I was there, I never received a cable from Nairobi asking what happened. No. That's the sense of pride. Teachers, same thing. Went to work, taught. I saw my children graduate, moving to other, becoming people in life, in the society. People were taking pride in that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's different.
Eric, you've touched where I'm concerned, a raw nerve. Your nerve, your walimu. Yeah, because you ask, why did we have certain types of individuals? It's because there are certain types of teachers.
Yeah.
And certain types of parents. Teachers were held in very high regard for the longest time. Very high regard. To the point where what the teacher said, a parent could take it and report you to your teacher.
Your teacher.
And you knew that was not something you particularly wanted. All right? But what actually brought this into being, if you think back, is the focus and the interest and the commitment that teachers had towards their student. You may think it was just, but you pass it on. That sense of commitment was passed on. So you have a person who grows up in a school. You're not told to be committed, but you see it. You
can see
imbue
the
it.
commitment.
Yes. And the things you learn and how you are taught and the concern they take. And everyone was known. Your parents were also known. Some may argue, but you want many. It's really not really a question of numbers.
Of how many you
No,
were.
it isn't.
Right.
It isn't. Because I know that you could even be a head teacher and you have 600 students and you know all their names. All. And you know actually who they are. But it all depends on the interest that you have. Now, when we started, this one I can tell you where the rain started beating us. I can tell you. When we started offering Kenyans the option of being teachers when they couldn't get what they wanted. Meaning, you wanted to do this, no, just become a teacher.
Or because it's not available, but you can do.
But you can
do
teach.
education. Yeah.
You are already saying that education is for people who have failed to
Yep.
get what they wanted to begin with. And then we had P1, P2, P3. I'm not sure they had P4. Meaning, you could get several Ds and still start off as a P3 teacher and then move up.
So I hear you saying then, CT, is that there was then mediocrity crept in, because if you put that against what Eric was saying, and I mean even stories that we were told when our parents worked in certain areas, is that you expected certain things to be done, and you also saw it to the end, whereby if this perfect picture has not been painted, it's because somebody did not, along the line, somebody did not do what they were supposed to do. And so the end result then would be compromised. But then we allowed it to be a minute late, 10 minutes
you see
late,
why I mentioned the Ds?
an hour late.
The Ds
became something that is just a normal. Train is late. It's okay, we'll wait.
It reminds me of a story. Sorry, CT, I know you're coming in, but it reminds me of a story that I saw just a few months ago in Japan. In one of the far-flung areas, as it would be, there was a boy who used to go to school. I think he's still going to school now. And he would depend on the train to pass in front of his bus stop or in front of his train stop every day. So he would walk 12 kilometers from his home to the train stop. Never once was that train late. Never once did the train not come. And he attributed his success in school because of the fact that that train passed where it's supposed to pass every day. If there was a mechanical problem with the train, they made sure ahead of time that there was an option. And this boy was able to complete his education because he had a way of getting to school. Now, if you were to apply what we're talking about now, somebody says, oh, come on, it's 5 minutes. What difference does just 5 minutes? Why are you making noise? We're going to get there. See,
5 minutes
we'll go.
5 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, see, we will reach. Why are you making noise?
Let's now bring that actually to the present. When Madaraka Express started operating, Nairobi to Mombasa, and it had to leave at a certain time, how many people went onto social media complaining, but I was at the station?
So you had to
but were you at the train?
I was at the station.
How can they leave?
How can they leave? I was just there. In fact, it's just because the security guards were telling me to open up my bags. I was there, and then I saw the train leaving. Surely. 7:30. I mean, I was out. This is it.
That's the problem.
The person is complaining that the service is on time.
As opposed to his time.
Yes.
What I was saying when I mentioned the D, you were not condemned simply because you didn't supposedly do well in that exam. You had an opportunity. That's what the P3, P2, it was an opportunity. You could move from one to the other to the other. But they also demonize services like the police service and the army. Because then, those ones, when you couldn't get into that teacher's college,
now you
are taken to that one. Now they're condemning you. Now, if you want to know where you're really condemned, Bible school. If you more or less couldn't get into any of these things, they figured,
become a priest.
You just become a preacher. And then just
but you know what?
There's Anderson Baines on the line. Let's hear from him. Anderson, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
We're
fine, thank you, Anderson.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute to the conversation. I have a theory. Now, my theory is this.
Yes.
Sometime a particular year, someone tried to overthrow the government. And that meant that the system was no longer a system. It was not professional. It was now going to be a friendship system. A friendship system means that you don't do what you do because you are the person supposed to be there. You do what you do because you can protect the guy on top. So that means decisions were no longer made because they were objective or because they are going to serve the right purpose. It proved to the people in power that it's not the system that works, it's who you know. And since then, that is the culture that has stuck. And it's worse now because I guess from that time, the trust disappeared. Now we are trying to find out how to make things better. But, I mean, the system has already...
It's a Joanna system.
Itself.
But wouldn't you say that even in those so-called olden days, what walikuwa na Joanna, people knew each other?
Yeah, but, the idea was that you did what you were supposed to do. It was not about protecting a system. Once the insecurity came in, the insecurity says that, yes, I am the leader,
Yep.
but I am not protected. And
I'm
what
not
was supposed
safe.
to protect? I'm not safe, exactly. And what was supposed to protect me? It was a system. So it's like the system had to be put aside, and something else had to work. Something that would ensure that, everything remains as it should. And I think that's why I really like to champion democracy and to allow processes to go their course. Because as long as we want to subvert correct processes, then what are we using? We are just playing a game with no rules.
Yeah.
And even this issue we are talking about this morning about corruption and all those things, they are institutes and agencies. But it's like either we don't trust them or we don't feel they are doing a good job. But as long as they exist, they are the only institutions that we have to use to push our agenda. So we have to either reform those institutions, but there is no day when we can say we are going to do away with them.
Anderson, have we all been recruited, including you and I, to be protectors of the system?
No, I won't say that, because even as we say now, personally, today I am very optimistic about my country.
Are you a protector of the system?
I protect the system as far as I understand that the system is there to work for my good and the good of my brother, my sister, my neighbor, for every single Kenyan citizen. The country we call Kenya is governed by rules and laws, not necessarily in the context that we say that now we are observing them, like to the letter. I don't know what you understand, but the spirit of it.
Yeah.
The glue that keeps society together.
Yeah.
It says that I am not supposed to go and chop up my neighbor's cow.
Yeah.
I am not supposed to throw rocks at a car when it is passing. Simple rules which are meant to ensure that my neighbor and I...
That there is harmony in the community and society.
Exactly. That's what rules are all about.
But there's a little detail
that
I just want to throw in. There is a little detail of societal norms and expectations about you and those closest to you called your relatives. Yeah. If you are the sort of person who doesn't help your relatives, what picture do you paint to the society around you? The reason why I'm asking is this. It's this concept of being helpful to your relatives that brings about the concept of nepotism. And yet, it is important for you to help those close to you.
Yeah. So, let me give a good example, which is my own personal view. We have a governor. He's the one who has been voted in democratically to deliver services to the people in his county. He's supposed to build a road. Money is allocated in a budget.
Right.
So we say that, yes, there is a road that is supposed to come from point A to point B. This is the budget for this road. Somebody wins the tender and builds the road. And we go to the road and the road has been built. And it is a good road according to the budget that was allocated. What other questions do we need to start asking? Why should we start finding out whether he built it with his own two hands and pocketed all the money? What is of interest? Are we trying to prevent the governor from becoming rich, or preventing the governor's wife or daughter or brother or
you've raised
cousin?
a very, very valid point.
Or is it the road that we wanted?
A transparency and accountability.
If from the very beginning he had said, I want to build this road, and participating in the bidding process openly, then that's fine. The problem comes when we can clearly see that this person did not tell us from the very beginning that I could do this road cheaply, and I'll maintain the standards. And then we come to discover later that that road that was built cost 10 times more than it should have, and it was actually done by the governor. That's where now it's the lived experience that CT keeps telling us. We have seen this before, and therefore we get to a point where we're like, if it's the person who's doing it, there's some personal interest that he's going to protect.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the questions arise.
Yeah. So if the system is working the way it's supposed to work, we should not be asking issues like
it shouldn't matter.
The idea is if we had a budget and we stuck to the budget and we got what we wanted from it, you will never prevent a governor from helping their brother.
The system you speak of, unfortunately, also comes with something called conflict of interest.
Interest.
And it also comes with very many other details of how such things should be conducted. And I'm agreeing with you about the system. If indeed it's adhered to, then there shouldn't be an issue. The issues don't arise necessarily from abiding by the systems, but by adding to the system. As in, the cost doesn't quite meet what was expected, the size of whatever, there's a few inches short here,
quality.
The aggregate is not quite what you agreed on. And these never appear when that road, the proverbial road, is completed. It comes with the first heavy rains.
Yeah. Anderson, thank you very much for your contribution this morning.
Asante, sir. Thanks so much.
Asante.
Thank you.
You're calling from Nairobi, right?
Yes, sir.
Asante.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Have a good day.
8 minutes to 8 o'clock. 0719-012-600. What do you think? How did we get here? And then, how do we get out of here? Should we get out of here? How do we get out of here as well? Good morning. Let's take a quick break. At 6 minutes to 8 o'clock at the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues. How did we get here? 0719-012-600. The person is the beginning of a nation.
It is the individual, because we keep saying these people in government, but these are people. Because when they leave that government office, when they leave that political rally, they're going home, for example, to either meet with spouse, children, with family, brother, sister.
Yep.
These are individuals. These are human beings. Just the same way you and I can look at someone and say, it doesn't really matter because I go home to prepare a meal and stay with my family, or I go home to hang out with my children. So do they. These are individuals who do the same thing. So absolutely, yes, it begins with that person. And I think about my mother, who is 72 years old today, and is a pharmacist, and was in an area in Nigeria whereby she worked in one of the biggest teaching hospitals in the south of Nigeria. And and she used to tell us, the government officials who would approach her, people of might and power in terms of political and financial influence, would ask for bribes. would basically come and offer her money to be able to serve their interest first when it came to big government tenders for health. And it was always no. Until the attitude was that, Mrs. Okoh, if you're looking for a way to get in the back door, that is where you should not go. Avoid her completely. And she has remained that way till today. The slightest thing, whatever it is. So now I say that she's passed through time where we say that we've allowed mediocrity to creep in, we've allowed compromise to creep in. She's passed through time.
She's remained principled.
Right. So it is still the individual. You can get through without being stained or tainted.
Yep.
It's possible.
If all of us individually just decided to live like that, there's absolutely no way the people who are corrupt or people who are not doing the right thing will find space to live in the society. They will feel so exposed that they'll have to change their ways. There's absolutely no way I would be saying that, you know what, governors are receiving 316 billion shillings across the country and they're not doing any work. And yet we sit down with them. They're our brothers, they're our cousins, they're our uncles, they're our aunties. We have conversations with them and
Take advice from them even.
And we talk to them like, mweshimiwa.
Utmost respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Maximum
allow
respect.
them to do that. And we look for the opportunity to get to that position so we can do the same thing. So how did we get here?
We opened the
We
door.
opened the door. We keep it open to date. And this whole thing of pointing fingers at everybody else is pointing fingers at the wrong person.
Okay, because here you are in a situation where we point fingers, okay? I point fingers, you and I point fingers and say, that individual, look at them, stealing a
look
million
at the
shillings
government.
here, no
The
big
government
deal.
is failing us.
But would it be that then you get into a position where somebody then would be able to influence you or make an offer to you? Would you say no?
Is that the problem?
Exactly. That's the question. Then you say, actually, you know what? Getting into that position, it's a whole different kettle of fish. The opportunity, once it knocks, would you be able to hold yourself to the same moral high standard that we hold these other individuals to when we point the fingers? And I think that's the direction perhaps that we should be looking in.
We start passing the excuses and saying, you know what, after I started working with government, I got to realize really how government works. And I mean, you've got to give some, win some. And so I allowed some of these things to pass so that, things can happen. This is it. You get compromised. You become compromised. For me to get things to work, yes, I was elected to parliament and I had this grand ideas and I wanted things to run this way in this country. Then I got there and I realized this is a pigsty. I just realized that I needed to also get dirty so that I can get things done. And that's your excuse for why things are not done the way you had said you're going to get them done.
And the conversations just get worse. Someone who you knew 3 years prior, probably a university don, or someone whose employment was clear, is talking to you about how it's so difficult to manage these young people nowadays.
Yeah.
They just want to drive around in Mercedes Benzes and do nothing. Your gob stopped. You don't even know what to say. Because essentially they've told you their children drive Mercedes Benzes.
Yes.
Huh? And it's really sometimes very difficult. And you're thinking, what is this thing that you, sir or madam, have done? This conversation has to continue.
This conversation must continue. Coming to the top of the hour, remind us today's proverb.
There is no shortcut to the top of a palm tree. Nada. Doesn't exist.
None at all.
Even that catapult you mentioned.
Yeah.
What if you miss it?
You can parachute onto the tree.
What if you miss it?
It's coming to 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
On Thika Road today, jam is bumper to bumper from Utali all the way to Muthaiga, and it is a problem today, guys. It has gotten much worse as we are looking at it now. So from Roy Sambo to Roiro, in that other direction, it looks fine. Coming into the CBD, however, this is where we have a problem. It's going to be needing some patience, guys. Uhuru Highway, very slow, but it's moving all the same. And this is all the way from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout all the way to Westlands, getting in through the CBD, it's going to take you a while to get out of there. All right. If you can get onto the so just coming back to Thika Road for a minute, if you can use the service lanes, you will be fine. And then on Mombasa Road, a little bit right around Cabanas, but then you find after that, getting towards Nyayo Stadium, coming off of Langata Road, getting through to Bagavi Way, or down then towards Nyayo Stadium, you should be fine as well. Coming out of Westlands, there's a little bit of a hold up, but it's normal for this time. So traffic looks like it's normal, but the areas where we would have the normal hold up. Spice FM KE. If you run into something that we should know about to let others know about, let us know.
Traffic. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation.
www.spicefm.co.ke, Facebook SpiceFM KE, YouTube and Twitter SpiceFM KE. Join the conversation. Follow us on Instagram SpiceFM KE. So the next conversation is still going to be related to what you had started, CT. How did we get here? When did the rain start beating us? And what is the nature of this rain? Is it acid rain? I mean, what is it about the rain?
Is it purple rain?
Is it purple rain? Well, see what you did there. It comes back into also our leadership and how we participate in the governance of our country. We've got political parties. Just the other day, we were celebrating Saba Saba, which was the clamor and the push and like the highlight point of the push for multipartism, a return to multipartism in Kenya. That happened in 1990. 30 years later, we have very many political parties in the country. But every time we talk about political parties, people start associating a party with an individual and saying, this party, Inile Kalonzo, Wiper. When you think about Ford Kenya, you think, okay, this is Batangula. When you think about Amani National Congress, you're thinking, this is Musalia Mudavadi. When you're thinking about ODM, it's Raila Odinga. Jubilee is Uhuru Ruto. So you are at that point where you're thinking political parties have basically become people's briefcases. And they are vehicles for attaining political governance. But is that what the people who are fighting for multipartism are fighting for? What was the ideals? We spoke to Mishi Njeri Thorne, who was among those people who organized the first Saba Saba rally. And he was telling us he's still the Secretary General of Ford Asili. He still sits there and believes that Ford Asili represents certain ideals. When they are forming political parties, some people actually look at it and they see, there are certain ideals, there are certain things that we'd like to introduce to the governance of the country, and this is what we shall stand for, this is what we shall push, this is what we shall advocate. Are we there? Or just political parties?
I mean, unfortunately, from what I see and how I see the things that have been operating, is that political parties are purely vehicles to get certain individuals into positions of government. The way in which they operate. No. That's why I didn't say in Kenya. Generally, there are some countries, however, where political parties, you don't play with what the ideology is. And it's very clear from the beginning. It's never muddled. It is clear that this is the agenda that we will always pursue. Whether it is somebody who sits in this position today or 100 years from now, you join the political party because you share or are part of that ideology. And there are countries whereby that happens. However, the general way of doing things as we see it now is that it is purely a vehicle to put particular people in positions of power, or to allow other individuals then to be affiliated with said power, which, in my opinion, is unfortunate.
Wouldn't you say that if you look, say, at the West, there has been an interesting occurrence with political parties as new leadership has come in, to the point where these policies and ideologies seem to merge and mix, to the point where sometimes they're not really very clear how different they actually
The
are.
divide between one party and the next.
The Conservative Party and the new Labour Party, they at some point seem really so similar.
Some of the things that they push are the same.
Yes.
But here is the thing, though, right? See, we are talking about what the parties stand for and the confusion in what the party stands for. The difference with what we have in the country is an individual. Today, you talk about the Labour Party, you cannot say so and so.
No, not an individual, but a group of people.
It's a cabal of people.
A club.
They come in, they go, but then they keep changing, right? At the top, they agree on some issues, they disagree on some issues. They go back to the populace and they say, let's remove so and so because he's not agreeing with what the rest of us are agreeing with. You see, there's at least a group of people. So even if today one person leaves that party, it's them who have left. The party remains. In Kenya, Musalia Mudavadi leaves ANC. Tomorrow ANC is gone.
Finished.
What party was he in before when he formed ANC? Was it UDM or something? That party, we no longer remember it. It's because it's individuals. So how do we then entrench this political party democracy in the country? There's an organization called the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. In that whole clamor for multipartyism, parties came together and they formed the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, which champions the ideals of political parties and multipartyism in the country. Let's talk to the chairperson of this organization, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. She is the nominated Senator Abshiro Halake. Good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, my friends who are on this show.
Good morning.
Your friends are fine, and how are you today?
I am very well.
Senator, thank you very much for speaking to us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
We are talking about political party democracy, and there's this organization called the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, just for purposes of people who may not never have heard of CMD. What is CMD and what does it stand for?
Actually, CMD stands for the platform for parties to come together to dialogue and to entrench democratic governance in this country. So basically, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy belongs to all political parties. It is their space, their platform, where then they discuss, they dialogue, they hold each other and others to account, and they ensure that democratic governance is entrenched and that political parties play their rightful role, they have the right capacities, and that then they become the vehicles and tools of entrenching democracy and multi-party democracy for that matter in the country. So that's what we are. We actually are owned and work for the political parties and for democratic governance.
So it's a forum where all political parties participate?
Yes.
Is it a membership? Does a political party have to subscribe to join the CMD?
Yes, it's by membership.
Okay.
Of course, although we are, we welcome all political parties, but sometimes some of the programs and some of the, the participation is, and we get resources from political parties so that then they can have their say, they own it, and there's ownership as well. So yes, we encourage and we have members.
Who funds this organization?
Actually, we're self-funded from political parties, keeping it to a small extent, but then we also fund from other similar democratic institutions around the world. Right now we have the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy, we have the Dutch, which is the NIMD, we have USAID, we have the UN Women. So we have several organizations who are in the democratic governance space that then come to us with different programs and different partnerships.
Okay, so then how involved are you from party to party? There's so many who would appear, before we even get into ideologies, who would appear to have different ideologies, and there's certain things that they're pushing for the country. How involved do you get in the operations of parties?
Actually, we don't get involved in individual parties. each party ideally should take care of its own internal structures, its own internal ideological issues, its own internal manifestos, and their people. What we do is we capacity build them to be able then to do that for themselves. And then we bring them all together so that they can dialogue with each other and they can work together. Basically, then we become the conduit between, and we become the people that then bring them together and have them, entrench the democratic governance. But internal politics, we don't really get into it as such. But we encourage them. We make sure that the right structures, the right governance structures exist, and their capacity built to do that, and they're encouraged and help to resource themselves in different ways. And then we sort of come in at the collective level.
When you talk about multi-party democracy, then democracy stands out. So the first thing that one would expect is that you champion democracy within the political parties.
Yes, we do.
And one of the basic things about having a democracy within a political party is ensuring that a party has proper structures for allowing members to participate in the operations of the party.
Absolutely.
Therefore, it takes us to elections.
Yes.
Just looking back at political parties in this country and elections, that is one thing that it's like water and oil. Political parties in Kenya and holding grassroots elections is something that is unheard of for very many years. We haven't heard a political party organizing grassroots elections from all the way down and having even a national delegates conference where they elect their top leadership. So what is it that political parties say about this?
Eric, that's not entirely true, actually. I think you guys are so busy with your own things, you're not paying too much attention. But several parties are actively engaging in membership recruitment on a rolling basis. Some have even embraced technology and are actually using that. For instance, ODM launched a digital membership recruitment, and it's been going on for almost a year. KANU youth have come up with this innovative idea called Jukwaa, where young party members hold town halls, and at that point they elect their leaders and they enlist members. For instance, my own party, KANU, is also currently working on a membership drive blueprint, and we're going to launch in the next few days even an online way of which we can be working. The Registrar of Political Parties records indicate that over 13 million Kenyans have enlisted as members in various political parties. So we expect that all the newly registered parties recruited members to fully comply in regards to the elections. Therefore, people like Jubilee, Ford Kenya, KANU, among others, have been running their grassroots strengthening programs. And before the COVID-19, Eric, we had Jubilee was supposed to hold its elections in March, if you remember. Ford Kenya conducted grassroots elections in 20 counties just last year alone. KANU has reorganized its leadership in more than 10 counties. So I think sometimes if you really follow, and for us who are in this space, we are following. Is it perfect? I'm not purporting it to be perfect. I know we can do better. We can perhaps even do more and do that. It's fair to note that internal party election is one of the most important democratic exercises, of course. But sometimes, on occasions, we have seen parties weakening instead of strengthening as a result of these things. Because sometimes you've seen people falling off because they were not elected and what have you. Sometimes, so parties are a bit walking, a tightrope sometimes.
Senator Halake, you've talked about some, off the top of it, it's interesting that these things are happening. What role do you play in communicating some of these things that are going on? Because the general opinion or general, eye on it would be that, all right, well, not much is going on. Without the communication of the same, it becomes difficult to be aware of these things.
Right. Actually, again, our mandate is actually not communicating what parties are doing. Ideally, parties being part of the landscape of the political space as they do their things, the media is covering and what have you. And have you seen some of these things also is that these are very expensive exercises, Eric, and we sometimes, unless you're telling them, here is the money to do these things, it becomes a bit difficult to say, you go out there, do these things at this time. And so political parties sometimes struggle, to be very honest, and I'm sure that it's a subject of a lot of the issues we are facing right now about political parties funding and things like that. Sometimes political parties may want to ignore an essential element in both internal and perhaps multi-party democratic practices, such as structures, and political parties must not only be seen to do things externally, but also do things internally. So I cannot say that as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, we have advertised or we have done that, but we have supported all these processes, and that is how I know what these parties have been up to, because we've been part of it. We've been, each time there's maybe a Ford Kenya or ANC or Wiper party, issues or elections, or we are there, our officers are there, or we are providing a little bit of financing here and there to organize some of these things. Again, of course, financing is always an issue, even for us as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, especially now when international funding has dried up for a lot of the non-governmental organizations in the democratic space.
Yeah. Senator, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and continue this conversation. I'll start off with pushback from that, what you've just raised, that political parties have been conducting elections, they've been conducting recruitment drives. I have something to say about that, but let's just take a quick break. We're taking a look at the weather.
I didn't say it's perfect, but yes.
Nothing is perfect. We'll look at the intentions as well.
Absolutely.
17 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are speaking with Senator Abshiro Halake. She is a nominated senator belonging to KANU political party, and she is the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, a forum that brings together all political parties in the country. Well, many political parties in the country will come together and they advocate and champion democracy, political party democracy in Kenya. Let's take a look at the weather. This conversation continues. Good morning.
It's warming up a little bit in Nairobi this morning. Mostly cloudy conditions will prevail later in the day. Highs of 24 and lows of 12. It's mostly cloudy in Njeri at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 22 with showers expected later. In Nakuru at 15 degrees, it is partly cloudy. It will change later though to rains with highs of 22. Eldoret, light rain showers already coming down at 14 degrees. Likely to be the situation for the rest of the day with highs of 19 and lows of 11. It's mostly cloudy in Kisumu at 21 degrees. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 18. Kakamega is partly cloudy at 17 degrees. Showers coming down later with highs of 22 and lows of 14. 24 degrees and partly cloudy in Mombasa. Highs of 28 and lows of 23 with showers forecasted for later. In Malindi, it's mostly sunny at 26 degrees. Cloudy conditions to follow later with highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's partly cloudy in Kampala at 19, highs of 25. And in Dar es Salaam, 22 degrees and mostly sunny, highs of 29 and lows of 21. Joburg is looking just a little bit warmer at 6 degrees, mostly sunny conditions today, highs of 18 and lows of 2. And finally, in Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 24 degrees. Rains expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 23.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have Eric Latiff, CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and on the line, we are joined by Senator Abshiro Halake. She is the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. The Center for Multi-Party Democracy is a membership organization that started in 2004 with a mandate to enhance multi-party democracy and strengthen the institutional capacity of political parties in Kenya through policy influence and capacity building. The organization provides a platform for political parties, political actors, and policymakers to engage in dialogue and cooperate in strengthening multi-party democracy in Kenya. So, when you talk about democracy in the country, when you talk about multi-partyism in the country, it's anchored on strong political parties. And the Senator, we've just gone, before the break, we were talking about how parties are strengthening their own internal institutions, internal mechanisms, internal membership participation in the governance of their parties. And the first thing that I asked is recruitment. Yes, you've said the parties are coming up with their own best ways of recruitment. And then the elections. So you said like Ford Kenya conducted elections in some 20 counties last year. Other political parties are organizing and coming together to come up with elections. Jubilee had claimed that they were going to have elections in March. By February, there was absolutely no structure in place to indicate that Jubilee was preparing to have a nationwide election. This is the truth of the matter. Whatever they were doing behind the scenes, it was not coming out clearly, being the largest party in power. And the pushback that I was saying I'm going to come back with is there's a requirement of the law, Political Parties Act, for parties to register their returns, for parties to show that they are still active, for parties to, register their updated registers of party members. And to meet those requirements, some political parties may just do the tokenism bit of showing that we have signatures and ID numbers, and these are our members. That to meet those demands or the expectations of the law, some political parties may go out there and say that we've conducted elections. But the truth of the matter is, yes, we are busy in what we do, but we live in this country and we participate in the governance of the country. We do not see political parties organizing proper elections on the grassroots where they come up and you can tell, Ford Kenya, this is what was happening. ODM, this is the election. KANU, this is the last time KANU held an election. This is what the reality is on the ground, Senator.
For sure. Eric, I did not say that this is perfect, but what I'm trying to say... You see, that you alluded to the Political Parties Act, which requires political parties to have certain standards.
Yes.
Includes even establishment of a conspicuous, accessible, and secure place in at least 24 counties of their choice. Parties are also required, of course, to recruit at least 24,000 members, which is 1,000 members per each of these 24.
Yep.
They have to also ensure the national outlook and what have you. But on the other hand, what one thing we've seen as CMD, for instance, a lot of these parties actually have these structures because for them even to be registered, they must have satisfied. But CMD is not the registrar to ensure that these things have been done and what have you. Once we have a political party that has been registered and has a certification from the registrar of political parties, our assumption then is that they have done the requirements of the law, that they have functional structures from the outset, because even that's a requirement for even parties to be registered.
Yeah.
However, one of the things I know that the overhead, for instance, for running these kind of things, be they offices around the country, they run into millions, Eric, every month.
Yeah. So
to maintain these things is quite expensive for some of these political parties. And to say that, okay, because it's too expensive, then you stop being a political party, I don't even think it's fair also, because as you know, a lot of our businesses or our just generally our things across the board may not really have the perfect governance structures in place. We're not condoning it, but for CMD, for instance, once the registrar of political parties is satisfied with a political party, however small, however briefcase, however individually facing it is, then we of course we respect. And as you know, modern civilization was based on division of labor. That particular aspect belongs to the registrar of political parties, who is enforcing these things. So for me, as the chairperson, once a political party has the certification from the registrar, then I assume that they have done what they're supposed to do.
They've met the basics.
But we know, of course, that's now the basics. Now, on top of that, as way of holding ourselves or as way of supporting, I talked about how then we support, these structures. We support, if there's an election, for instance, and there's a component of it that we can support, we would definitely do that. And we've done that. And that's how, when I was describing to you the few that have done these things, I know because of the support that CMD has provided. So again, but one thing I must say, you're right. Our political parties need to move to the next level. They need to start to be ideologically based, organized, and internal structures that are really outlive the personalities. Like when I was listening in, that outlive the personalities. But it's not also true that all parties just collapse. KANU has been here post-President Moi, post-President Kenyatta, post-President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was also the chairperson, and what have you. So, again, we cannot just say that it's all parties that, that are doing that. But, of course, there are certain parties that could actually disappear, yes. But, again, we're seeing a lot of parties now starting to coalescing. I don't know if I'm not certain that it's around ideologies. Unfortunately, it could be just political survival, and this is where we want to get away from to a bit more ideological based coalitions.
Okay, Senator, just looking at me, as very interesting that you've talked about. You would like to see parties in Kenya go towards the ideological in terms of practice and creed. How do you see this changing or evolving, whereby the practice has never been, in most recent times has not been ideologically based? How do you see the transition from the current way of doing things towards an ideological base, based on what you've just said?
I think the people need to be educated on the value of an ideological politics, of the value of value-based politics, of the value of good leadership in politics. And these are some of the things people are now realizing. When people chose certain personalities, and I don't want to mention names, and then they discover these people cannot run the cities, or they cannot run counties, or what have you, people are starting to learn. And these are some of the things we're starting to teach people as a civic education towards ensuring that we are thinking of the right leadership, we are thinking of the right governance when we choose the people that we choose, that we're choosing the right things, as opposed to voting perhaps because somebody has the money to do these kinds of things. It will take time, but these are some of the things that we engaging in terms of the at CMD with political parties and with the rest of it. A lot of times it's very easy for us to blame parties or party leaders or leaders generally. But I'd like to urge a team at SPICE, because I know you're very serious and you do these things. Look at the followership. Look at the people that vote us in. What do they want? And what do they know to? And so it's becoming very difficult, because there are people who've told me, Senator, I have been told I'm not electable. Even I have been told, reason or you're too honest, you're not a politician. If you're not going to tell people what they want to hear, then you're wasting your time.
You don't belong here.
Exactly. And our political parties are not in a vacuum. They're part of this society, they're part of this community. And so therefore they're below optimum, I accept. And we're trying so hard to make sure that we start to shift the minds of our leaders and of our followers. Because if you one day start thinking, leaders are bad, they're rotten, fine, but who would you choose?
But Senator, I must come back to you on this, because I'm trying to imagine a party that talks about, okay, let's just pick three things out of the hat now, whose ideology is one, development, economic empowerment, and social justice, for example, right?
Right.
Now, if there is a party that is based on these ideologies that begins to practice in the country, and anybody who goes through the processes of such a party, whenever they were in a position of leadership, they made sure that those three things happened. And the people who were governed saw that this actually happened, that we saw economic development take place, that we saw issues of social justice being sorted out. Whether it was one person for 5 years, the next person for another 5 years. Don't you think that that would be the way that then we would shift from this platform for individuals being at the seat of government to a party that is actually based on ideologies moving the people forward? Because it seems like people say that there are parties with ideologies and we would say we'd like to get there, but it really isn't happening, to be honest.
Who is to make them happen? We as citizens, and I'm going to push back on this, you guys, is that, we are always, right now perhaps I'm the one to make it happen, but you will not vote me in. So what I'm saying is this: it's about time we also start taking responsibility
as citizens.
As citizens, are you going to vote for the person that perhaps would bring those three elements, the social justice, the economic development? It won't be that person that will be voted in, and therefore the party will front at the bottom line, guys. A party is there to get power. This is how politics works.
Yep. That's
so
we know that.
Yes. If let's say I become that person, let's just hypothetically, let's say I'm that person that would have executed those three things, but I don't have. And perhaps I won't have a chance because of the fact that what the electorate wants is a person that would give them money, and I don't have it. So again, we need to share the responsibility at the very least. As citizens,
we agree.
Would you give a chance?
To a certain extent.
The political party, you think will front me? Even if I was the person that would have ensured that we get those things? Maybe not, because
has the political party done enough work of fronting you as a candidate, of selling you to the members of that party? If a political party went and recruited members, then there must be something that came and convinced that KANU used to convince Eric Latiff to join KANU. And
absolutely,
if KANU therefore is an influential organ that can influence me to join it, then it can also influence me to vote for Abshiro Halake. Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, let's say we're not there yet. And we're not, and that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
And it will take time. But what I'm trying to say is this: it's about time we also started to look at our role in the status that we find ourselves in. Because and of course we're doing our best, at least especially wearing the hat of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, where I am on radio stations every single morning, in even I've learned mother tongues that I haven't learned in yet, trying to explain saving democratic spaces. But it will take a village, it will take a county, it will take a region for us to start waiting for a political party or somebody to do it. And for us to then start demanding these things as citizens. Do we have a role as political? Absolutely. Perhaps we have more responsibility, yes, political and other responsibility. But it's about time even us people will start then giving a chance to people, to leaders that would actually bring about this change that we want.
Let's take another break, Senator. This conversation continues. We have on the line Senator Abshiro Halake. She's a nominated KANU senator. She's also the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. We are discussing the role of political parties in entrenching democracy in the country. Good morning, 25 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at the traffic.
All right. On Magadi Road, between a trailer and a small vehicle, there has been an accident, unfortunately. There's a blind spot there that, obviously, because it's a blind spot, many people don't seem to see it. And this has caused an accident this morning. It's affecting traffic all the way then towards Langata Road. And there's a build-up there that will take you all the way down to the T-Mall roundabout. That's a problem this morning. So you need to be careful. 1. 2, you need to be aware of why you're not moving. So that's what's happening up ahead. Hopefully, the police will clear it out as soon as possible because they're already on the scene. That's what's affecting traffic on Langata Road today. Coming off Mombasa Road and getting into the city via Uhuru Highway, this is bumper to bumper. It's moving very slowly, but it'll open up in about half hour or so we don't have too much to worry about there. All right, Jogo Road and getting into the CBD via the City Stadium roundabout, that's opening up too. And this is traffic coming from industrial area, Jogo Road and other areas. So that'll open up. We shouldn't have much of a problem. So traffic looks good apart from the odd accident here or there. Coming off of Thika Road, getting into the CBD as well. It's fine. Service lanes are open and they're moving along swiftly today. And Muthaga Corner and Kiambu Road are not causing too much of an issue for Thika Road today. All right. Let us know what you see as well. Spice of MKE. That's on Twitter.
It's 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. This conversation continues, entrenching political party democracy in the country. Speaking with the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, Kenya, Senator Abshiro Halake. In the room is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, and C.T. Muga.
Madam Senator, I wish to ask the following.
Yes.
Are political parties a constitutional requirement? That's my first question.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know how we organize ourselves in the democratic space. It is a requirement, really. Although you're not excluded from running if you don't have a political party. But it's a democratic organization that, political parties then, and that's why we have acts and statutes that are actually entrenching the political party.
Basically, the Constitution recognizes political parties.
It recognizes, but my question was very specific. Is it a requirement?
Well, it's not necessarily. You see, the country is governed not just by the requirements of the supreme laws. We also have statute laws.
Let me ask this question a different way. Must we have political parties to have a democracy?
We don't have. But how do you execute? What are the mechanisms for executing the democratic, initiatives if you're not self-organized in party politics?
Are we saying that self-organization must be in political parties?
In the political space, it seems like the best of ways, to me anyway.
What else would it be, CT? I mean, we're talking about organizing yourselves politically so that you are able to better govern your country democratically.
Yes.
How else would we organize ourselves, CT?
Where I'm actually going with this question, I'm asking questions which in and of themselves appear to be obvious for a very simple reason.
Yes.
It is because we assume that these things are obvious that we sometimes find ourselves in the quagmire that we are in. Because with assumptions come expectations which are based on assumptions. For instance, we keep talking about ideologies. Must political parties have ideologies as prescribed by, say, the West? Because that seems to be our model.
Right.
Must they?
No.
And I'm saying no. Where I'm heading with this is our political parties are led by individuals. So we could argue that our political parties are individuals. And I'm saying, is it necessarily wrong?
Again, it's a good question. It's a very good question. You're right. It's a very good question. Is it wrong or is it? But remember, we talk about inclusion and participation by people. So having just one person vested with so much power to decide on everybody else perhaps may tend towards autocracy.
Yeah.
And that is why the proponents of multi-party democracy preferred, or at least encouraged, the self-organization within a political party where different people participate, different requirements for face of, let's say, Kenya, or face of the country in which the political party is resident. Because you cannot, outside of an institution, it's institutionalization that is important, and that's what political parties are, the institutions of democracy.
If we personalize and individualize our democracy, CT, I mean, what are we going to have?
You see, that's what we do with political parties.
But isn't that what we have right now?
Yes, that's what we do with political parties. Because you talk of individuals and you're thinking of a unitary measure, one person. But if you have 2 or 3 people who think the same thing, they're also unitary.
Yes, and then they come together into an institution.
So all I'm actually arguing is this. You're talking about a variety of the same thing. One appears to be more democratic because more people are involved, but they're of the same mind.
Not necessarily, surely. Let's say you have women in a political party. They probably don't think exactly the same as the man would think. You have young people. They don't think the same as the octogenarians. Somehow we cannot really look at it from such a cynical perspective where we say, well,
Madam Senator, I apologize. The idea was not to sound cynical, but rather inquisitive.
No. It's good. I'm also trying to say it may appear that way, because if, let's say, you genuinely brought on board women, you brought on board young people, you brought on board older people who maybe historical perspective, you brought on board diversity that is our country. Are you going to tell me that every person, no matter who is the leader of that, however, it cannot be such groupthink and such group ideology, surely. And this is why the requirements of the Political Parties Act was to ensure that at least 24 counties, because our counties also are very varied, they're very diverse. People in northern Kenya are not exactly the same of mindset or the same exposure as people in central Kenya or in West. So, of course, that's expectations, but they're not untrue, ideally when we come together. And again, I know the cynicism could come out of the fact that we haven't got it right. But it's not time to give up. It's a time to say, what can I play? What role can I play as media, as the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, as leaders, and as individuals to make sure that we start changing these things. And I agree with you. Yes, we do have people coming together that are thinking the same and are just executing what perhaps the leader of the party is saying.
In fact, the party you belong to is a perfect example in this sense. We have many parties, literally everybody who is in some diverse political party in this country was at some point or the other in KANU, yes. And to understand this, you only need to look at the way they go about their business. You actually see a replication of what KANU has done over the years. It's couched in all sorts of interesting language, and democracy is liberally spread in the conversations. And the people and the wants of the people are also very liberally thrown into the conversation.
And maendeleo.
Right.
And wananchi. And development. But
so actually, the new KANU Sasa is the one that's now the new one. The rest have moved on with their old ideologies and stuff.
Can I ask a question that maybe could help into this? And it's basic, it may sound rudimentary, but why? Because you talked about recruitment drives around the country, so that's clearly something that's happening. Why are people, young people across divides, why are they joining political parties in Kenya today? From what you've seen,
actually, for various reasons. There are those that I know. The young people right now, of course, unemployment is at its highest, and some of them think that it could be a career for them. Others think that others actually have political ambitions. Others probably think, I need to be close to power to be able to. So there's different things why people are joining. Yeah, because people come to me and say, I'd like to join KANU, for instance, because I want to run, and then some of them are actually joining because when they see, let's say, when they see a certain individual, perhaps that they would like to align themselves with.
Yeah.
So these are some of these things that people are joining for. But again, of course, everybody has different motivations. I can't know exactly why some people are joining and some people are not. So basically, the ones that I have interacted with, the young people have said they also want to make sure that they're represented, because they keep saying, we don't have employment, we don't have this, and therefore we have to be at the table, and they think that resources follow maybe power or things like that. So there are a lot of people that do that. I know the university students usually have told me that when I've had Jukwa sittings with them.
And why do they choose KANU and not another party?
Actually, all parties are attracting people.
No, I'm talking about the ones that joined KANU that you've talked to.
The ones I've talked to that have joined KANU have been attracted perhaps by many things, actually. Sometimes people see that, let me just, and when I'm talking about, when I'm a Center for Multi-Party Democracy chair, I'm trying to be careful not to really highlight KANU too much, because at this point I should be highlighting everybody. But I know what's happening in KANU a bit more than what's happening even in all the other parties.
Yep.
So please allow me to. A few months ago, we were actually rated as the most reformed party. So again, this kind of thing, and we pushed that and said we are one of the most reformed parties, and we have also pushed the narrative that we are the party of independence. We have the resilience. We have the, we are a party that is in all the counties, and therefore we have certain advantages structurally because we've been there.
This is the language that you use when you're going out on recruitment drives. This is what you basically is your marketing language strategy. It's
the truth. It's also the truth, Eric. You know why? As much as people, of course, we have been branded as a party that was, misrule and all those kinds of things, which could be true. But the party I am in now is not the party that was there before. Literally everybody that was accused of this thing is no longer in the party.
Yeah.
The party that I am in now is a party that handed over power very peacefully in 2002 when the people decided it didn't need our, us to be in power. It is the party that brought independence. It's the party that stepped back and repealed the Section 2A. That is that party. So a party is not the buildings, it's the people. And right now, KANU has quite a lot of news, and a lot of our parties have tried to do this thing, and have been holding government accountable in the opposition, for instance, be it ODM and be it the NASA group. So it is not all doom and gloom. I know we could do better, but again, for me, really, I am starting to really push this back to our electorate, to our citizens. What are you making us do? Are you the ones that are really making the political parties just go to these kinds of...
I'm going to tell you, if you allowed people to participate in the running of your political parties, then you will see what they want you to do. And I go back to the question of elections and having nationwide elections and proper elections being conducted. If people were actually participating in these organizations, then they would bring in change into those organizations. Probably the noises that you hear from people outside political parties or during elections, you would have heard those noises long before if you had proper working structures of political parties. And you're saying, yes, that the people have a role to play. And I want to also put it the other way around. I see a political party as an influencer. Now, if a political party as an influencer is not taking its influential role in the community and saying, you know what, these are the ideals, this is what we stand for. Do not elect somebody who is a thief or who is has questionable sources of income into elective positions. This is what we would like to champion. Therefore, we'd like to champion somebody who is more sober-minded, somebody who is development conscious, somebody like Abshiru Halake. This is the person that we are propping for elective positions. Then the people, because these are political parties that's influential, people are likely to be influenced by what the party is saying. We don't get that.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. But let's just take an example. Let's take an example of this kind of person that has been propped by a party. Okay, let's just take an example, and it's going to be very simplistic. Let's take Peter Kenneth.
Yep.
He has been known to have, run his CDF very well. He has been sort of associated with, let's take Martha Karua. Have they been elected?
Yes.
Where are they?
They haven't won the election, but they have gotten votes.
Okay.
And they have at some point been elected as the people's representatives.
Yes. Peter Kenneth, as you
My
say,
point is made.
is
What I'm trying
touted
to
as
say
having
is-
run a good CDF because he was elected and he was in that position. Peter
and
Kenneth
that's what-
opted to
what
vie
I'm
for
saying is-
presidency. Many people did not agree maybe with the what he was saying, or they did not resonate with what he was saying, but he also still got some votes. Martha Karua, the leader of NARC Kenya, has run NARC Kenya, and you can say that she has gotten an increase in the number of people who are now subscribing to NARC Kenya, but she also got a substantial number of votes in the last election in Kirinyaga.
Okay. But my point is made. I hope you understand. I hope I am. My point is made. They are not sitting on the table of decision making today,
Yeah,
are they?
true.
So again, it's
They are sitting in the
in political space, Eric and team. As long as you haven't come to the table,
And which is this table, madam?
Parliament.
let's say it's parliament, let's say it's presidency. Let's say, because how do you influence consequential change from
The big table.
Are you saying, Senator, essentially that unless you're at the big table, you cannot influence any kind of change in this country?
You can. I'm not saying that. All I'm trying to say is this. I was just trying to push back on the idea that political parties should put the right people and we will vote for them. And I've just given you examples of perhaps, and simply just put people that the political parties have put forth that perhaps could have had good credentials or could have had, could have fallen in that description. They haven't seen. Remember Wangari Maathai? Remember, so again, I'm not saying, and I'm not blaming the electorate, but I'm just saying that we all bear responsibility of ensuring, and we're working very hard, and as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, to ensure that people and our electorate and our parties start to shift towards what we're discussing today: good governance.
Yeah.
Good value systems, social justice, and the economic development for all, inclusivity and equity, and execution as per our rule of law. Our supreme laws of constitution has one of the most progressive clauses. So, but what I'm trying to say is this: it's a journey, and that journey cannot just, and that responsibility can just be for political parties. The political parties are a cross-section of this society, and so we bear the responsibility as citizens, as media, as politicians, and as voters.
As members of political parties, we the voters, if we are members of political parties, then we will participate. But when you're not, and political parties are other people's tools, then we will not be able to participate. Senator, thank you very much for speaking to us.
You can change that, Eric. You can change that.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
If you know what? If you said, I will not vote for this party because of ABCD, or if you, there's a certain way. But what will this is a discussion for another day. But we're working on this sensitization and saying to people, please start to take individual responsibility.
Okay, asante sana. Senator, thank you for speaking to us. We know you're going into the Senate.
I'm to Parliament for this
so
revenue.
What's this standoff? I mean, is there a light somewhere at the end of this tunnel?
I think today, either way, we'll come up with something, and I'm sure there'll be consensus building. This is what politics is all about. Let's see how it goes. I don't want to say much.
Why has there been no consensus so far?
Of course, there's interest, and in these interests, there was a bit of hardline on different things, but I'm sure there'll be consensus. Consensus cannot be built in one day, so there's been a bit of a push to do that.
All right. So the conversation is going to happen in the Senate today, and we hope to...
Yeah, just now. In fact, I was hoping to do this interview from the car, but I didn't really reach the car door, so I'm still at home. I need to go.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Rush off then.
Yeah, thank you.
Senator Abshiru Halake is the nominated senator for Kanu, and so she's the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Yeah, we ask those questions. We put on our opinions as well as we are doing the questions. And these conversations must happen. Political parties in this country must get to a point where they allow member participation. That's my bottom line. I don't know what yours is, Nduh.
Well, I mean, if you're going to call for responsibility of certain things to be done when it comes to the political frameworks through which the country operates, then at the same time, you're going to have to ask for people's opinions. You're going to have to include people's opinions. You're going to have to include people's wants and desires or dislikes. You're going to have regard for them. It can't just be that one person makes the decisions and then you ask people to take responsibility. How? It just doesn't make sense. It's got to be inclusive.
Nope, it won't be.
Well, if you're going to ask for responsibility,
There has to be
there has to be something on the other side. Otherwise, don't ask people to take responsibility
Inclusivity
for something
must
that you're not
happen, or
going
at
to
least
involve
it
them
It
in.
must
Please
appear.
remember,
It must appear to happen.
You know,
Yeah.
there are two discussions taking place here. There's what ideally we think and hope would happen, and there's what has happened in the past and continues to happen. It isn't complicated, really. You really think our political parties really want change? They are so similar in so many ways. They are so similar. So even when you're joining the other, it's probably because of just some interest and affiliation, and maybe you like the person more than you like the other.
Or who took you in today?
Yes, or the region that seems to highly favor that particular party, and which guarantees you to some degree that there's a greater likelihood of you being elected if you stand or if you vie on that particular ticket. You see, the evolutionary process of political parties in this country is clear. The process is there, but the status quo is actually what people want to maintain. And those in power agitate for change, get there, and then are the front runners, and then are at the forefront of ensuring the status quo is maintained.
The other day we were watching a news feature on KTN News, which was reminding us about elections in Fort Kenya. Remember? And you could see members of, Fort Kenya had announced this is what we're going to have a national delegates conference, and we're going to have this. We keep talking about how, at what point did Moi say, let's repeal Section 2A? It was at a national delegates conference. When is the last time you saw a political party in this country holding a national delegates conference?
Man, you'd be hard-pressed to remember. And part of the reason is because it didn't happen.
Yep.
Yes. And it isn't one party.
It's all
Across
political
board.
parties. From the big one to the small one, from Jubilee to ODM to Wiper to
ANC to Ford Kenya to Ford Asili.
all of them, to NARC Kenya to Maendeleo Chap Chap, all of them.
So,
as long as you don't have structures that
don't
allow
allow
people
participation
to
and
participate.
involvement.
and they all talk democracy.
Yeah,
A lot of it.
This is
Talk about
democracy.
it's an oxymoron, that one. Really.
We say this is democracy. It's political party democracy. Coming to the top of the hour, we're going to switch gears a little bit in the next hour. But as we do that, City, today's proverb.
There is no shortcut to the top of the palm tree. Now, a palm tree, for those who don't know, are the ones that have these leaves that are like sprout from a certain central point.
Yeah, the coconut tree.
And they look like a modern hairdo.
And the only way to get up there is climbing the tree.
It is useful for you to climb. There's any other way may end up disastrously for you.
You could cut the tree, bring the top of the tree down.
Yes, then there'll be
And
no
they'll kill the
climbing.
tree, and then there'll be no climbing or used to climb.
Shortcuts. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, really hasn't changed much as we see it. That traffic is not so bad today. Parts of the road on part of Ngong Road is still being sorted out, so this causing a little bit of a hold up there, but it shouldn't last too long. So through most parts of the city and looking around the country as well, traffic is not so terrible this morning, unless it does change. But for now, it looks good. Thika Road, a little bit of traffic right around there, and we still have the incident. On Magadi Road, so that's causing traffic, and as far back as the Multimedia University, so that's causing traffic now on Langata Road, inbound to the city. Apart from that, it looks good. A little bit of a hold up on Mombasa Road as usual, but you'll get out of it soon enough without too many injuries. Spice of MKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter in case you see something that we should know about.
Traffic. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging.
On our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Before we move into the next conversation, which is about COVID-19 and stigma, there's something that I've seen in the papers that is found quite interesting. Thermos. City. Is that a thermos?
No.
See the flask?
The flask.
Yes, it's a thermos. So
Actually, it isn't. It is a stainless steel vacuum bottle.
Well, okay.
Thermos is actually a trade name for one of the companies that makes such stainless steel
Yes.
vacuum bottle.
You see, Eric, the question
And
you're asking me
most of them are usually plastic.
is the
plastic
question
flasks.
is the question that was asked for the longest time about public transport from Thika, otherwise known as the Nissan. Irrespective of what make of the vehicle,
The Nissans.
they were all Nissans.
For some time, there were vehicles that were going to Kitale that were called Wepesi, and they were Peugeots.
Yes.
And you go to the Peugeot, ya Kitale.
Yes, exactly. I was going to tell you, Peugeot, you might confuse them with Peugeot.
Peugeot, ya Kwenda. So, the story here is about thermos, the plastic flask. And there's a tussle between two organizations over that trade name for thermos, the trademark thermos. A company called Doshi Ironmongers Limited has placed a public notice saying, look, you know what? There's an order of the High Court that has been given, and Doshi Ironmongers Limited has a certificate of registration of the trademark thermos to operate in this country, and any attempt by another company called Thermos Hong Kong Limited to recall the certificate of registration issued to Doshi Ironmongers has been rejected by the Registrar of Trademarks. So there's a company called Thermos Hong Kong that had gone and sought favor of the courts to get this trademark, and now through their lawyers in the country, they are also going back and forth on this particular matter. It's quite interesting that thermos. So if you just say it in Swahili, what wanapigania thermos?
A flask, by its nature, as long as it contains beverage, not water, because we understand there's a difference between a water bottle and a thermos. Yes, we do get terms like that with over time become generic. It is what it represents many other things.
It does.
Okay, let's talk about COVID-19 and stigma.
Right. So the cases in the country continue to rise. The cases around the world continue to rise of COVID. And as this happens, what inadvertently happens at the same time is that more and more people that you as an individual would know or are close to, or somebody who knows somebody that is close to you, would get infected. So then what happens is that it comes closer home. So whereas previously it was there is COVID-19 out there, with the increase in cases, the chances are that somebody you've come into contact with or somebody that you know then also has become infected. Now, what happens is that we already know that the finger pointing has already taken place, and it's really getting to a degree whereby people, whether you're recovered or not, number one, don't want to have anything to do with you. Whether you have tested positive previously and then you have recovered and then been found to be negative, you still wear the big C on your chest, as it were, because whether you're well today, you were sick, and that's all that people remember. And all of these point to the stigmatization of this particular disease. You get it, you get well, but still you carry on with it. And unfortunately, what happens is that even after you have become well, people, and it's psychological but true, people still wear this and, number one, start being affected. They don't want to come out in public. They don't want to discuss it. They don't want to even tell anybody that they have had it. Even more dangerous is that other individuals who do have it and might help in the healing of it for themselves or the prevention of the same for other people then will not speak out. And we have seen that one of the best ways to be able to curb the spread of COVID, already proven around the world, is that once you have it, you're being able to tell others that you have it protects other people from getting it and also helps you to heal faster in terms of the support. The stigmatization that we see also is starting to hit unprecedented levels across board. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be in the metropolis, you can be in the rural area. In fact, we've already heard stories of being in the rural area. Stigmatization is rife. They hear that from your homestead there was COVID. They don't want anything to do with you. And it is becoming a problem. And I'm saying that this morning, if we don't deal with issues around stigma, if we don't talk about it, if we don't openly discuss it, whereby making it acceptable and all right to have had COVID and gotten out of it, it's going to cause more problems than the infection of COVID itself.
So who should do this talking and all?
Everybody. It doesn't stop with one person. It's not the responsibility of one person. In this case, it's not the responsibility of government. It should be that we should be all right to talk about it.
But we're all talking about COVID every day.
I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean it shouldn't be the responsibility of government?
It shouldn't be the responsibility of government only to discuss this.
It never really is. But it's a question of demarcating and determining at what point the responsibility stops or even starts and where the individual responsibility begins.
Yeah, but how do you explain that? If somebody goes into a facility, for example, and they were COVID positive previously and now they're negative, and I've even discussed the fact that they're fine, but the individuals in that area don't want anything to do with that individual because they've had this disease before.
COVID, like any other pandemic, the one which we've had, we still have, and haven't completely overcome HIV, it is one of those situations and things that in the absence of continuous direct government intervention, the general public actually are doomed. And I mean doomed. Because the resources that right now they have, nothing has affected the livelihoods of individuals like COVID has. So even when we talk about responsibilities that they should have in looking after themselves, with what exactly? Even people whose circumstances were reasonable are now in circumstances that are completely wanting. So, the role of the government, unfortunately, has to be hyped here. It's hyped economically to try and see if you can uplift these people so that they can get back to where they were before, but at the same time provide support that takes these factors into consideration. So the role of the government, unfortunately, is pivotal.
But how long would it take to eradicate? You cannot really eradicate.
No, you can manage it.
How long would it take to get it to manageable levels? Because you see, look at how this pandemic, it's quick fire, right? Just from December, January, February, March, it's in the country. And by the time March, it's in the country, people don't even understand what's happening. Even the governments themselves don't know exactly what this is, right? They're dealing with that. And what they're telling people is, there's this thing that has come. Please be careful. Please take all matter of precautions. We don't even know we are not exactly sure how else it's spreading. We just know that coming into close contact with somebody, shaking hands, touching your own face, touching surfaces, this and the other could spread COVID. And then we keep saying that COVID itself does not move. It's people who move. And therefore, people who are moving, you could be coming into close contact with somebody with COVID and you don't know. So already, because of all that lack of awareness, or just because this thing is mysterious, mystery comes with the stigma.
Or what you're saying, the mystery actually feeds the stigma. Right? Because of the fact that you don't know, it could be you.
Yep.
So the likelihood of me to then want to stick to myself, or I don't want to come into close proximity with you, then becomes greater as a result of that.
Yep.
However, here it is. And I guess what you're saying is that it then carries on to, even if you've heard that an individual has healed, that same thing carries on, because you're thinking, okay, this individual had this. Whether they're healed or not really doesn't play in your head. What plays in your head is that you see COVID and they imbibe everything that is COVID. But unfortunately, what we're saying is that for those who may get sick later, they don't want to be in that position. So the likelihood of them not declaring their status, number one, and hiding away then becomes greater. And that itself is a greater danger.
Falling sick isn't really a problem. It's dying. Because a common cold is something that people have all the time, and it's very inconveniencing.
Yeah.
But people aren't afraid of a cold. Somebody will be sneezing. Before COVID in the vehicle, people don't even go into a panic or a tease. No. No. It's not a big issue because it doesn't kill people as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
But the moment you attach death to a disease, then the entire spectrum and understanding of it changes completely. If COVID simply made you uncomfortable and gave you a running stomach, people wouldn't panic.
Of course not.
But it kills people.
Yep.
And worse still, the manner in which it can land on you is so simple and is so everyday and is so commonplace that it throws you into a tease.
And it's invisible.
Yes, it throws you into a complete tease because you can acquire it by just going about your business normally.
Yep.
Not doing anything strange or overt or covert. Or
Now imagine if already you are telling yourself, when I'm in a public place, I do not know who may have COVID or who may not have COVID. All right? Yes. You're already telling yourself, I've got to take personal responsibility and keep distance from somebody because I don't know their status. And then here is somebody whose status, last week's status, you know. And now they're saying that I'm now well. Isn't it your personal responsibility? The first thing that your mind tells you is, okay, but
I need to stay away
this
from
one
you.
I can clearly see. There's I don't know. This one I clearly know that there was COVID here. I don't know the exact status of this COVID
I haven't
thing,
seen
whether
the
it
test.
has really left you,
Yeah.
whether you are completely healed, whether you have some remnants of it on your hair. I don't know. So I'm going to avoid you.
It's a catch-22, Eric.
It's a natural thing to do.
Sure, it's a catch-22, but at the same time, you can imagine the feeling that is absolutely natural. But what it does at the same time is that it puts other people who may be sick or would get sick in the future then in a difficult spot because they're not going to be able to say, because human beings don't want to be treated negatively. It's just a natural inclination.
Human being wants to be accepted.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you don't want anything that is going to ostracize you. And being sick with COVID, with the imminent cloud of possible death, is a big deal. And now coming into contact with somebody who has it, you don't want to, right? Now, the other individual who may get it doesn't want to feel that way. So there's no way on earth that they're going to tell you that I have or had this thing.
The really tricky bit here, if you think about it, is this. And then with more and more information, all right, you're told, if you're above 50, we haven't gone to 60, 50, front line. If you have diabetes, they even throw in percentages, 15%. If you're hypertensive, another 14%. Basic arithmetic there. You're already at 32%, and
you've not gone anywhere yet.
No, the above 50 you haven't even added. Okay? Then you throw in the other possibilities in whatever percentile and averages that you may be exposed to, and what it actually, the chances it gives the virus of actually causing you harm. You come into contact with such information, you already feel unsafe.
Yep.
Even before you're stigmatized, you fall into any of these categories, and you have one of these pre-existing. You are already before anybody
even says anything to you, or
you
does
already
anything.
stigmatized.
Absolutely, it does.
Self-stigmatization. You feel,
Yeah.
You mean
Anything. In fact, you start feeling like it's kind of hot.
yes.
My throat
And
is itchy.
usually,
Is it kind of hot?
I was coughing the
Or
other day.
am I-
Does that,
Yes,
does that mean
exactly.
something?
Yeah.
Right.
And this pain in my chest. There's nothing to do with your posture.
Or just
My
start breathing
hand.
and did I breathe as smoothly as I breathe?
I normally breathe. Why did I hear a wheeze?
You see, and it's a natural fear. I mean, it's brought about by the fact that this thing is not coming and telling us, this is who I am, and I'll be visiting you tomorrow.
And this way I can be found.
This is where I can be found. We don't know where it is. So, and that's why I asked you, so how long would it take for a program to actually bring the levels of stigma down?
It's not so much. It's not so much
the
levels.
time.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's not so much levels. It is how quickly the messaging that you want can be taken and understood to be appropriate, and how quickly it can get to the very grassroots of society. That is what determines, because if it's being communicated by people who are trusted in a language they understand, in a manner they understand, in a phrasing they understand, and it's done so continuously, you then begin to start winning the fight. From that point, you start beginning to win it. But if it is broad sweeping statements that appear either on your radio, or if you have a TV on your TV, if you have a smartphone on your smartphone,
That's a problem.
yes, a problem, because it's competing with a lot of other things that you also see on a daily basis.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll look at how should that messaging be structured. What is it that you should be telling people so that now you're starting to deal with the stigma associated with COVID-19? This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, 17 minutes after 9.
All right, it's brightening up in Nairobi, 17 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for most parts of today, highs of 24. Looking into Njeri, with highs of 22, we'll see rain showers later. And in Nakuru today, it's 16 degrees and partly cloudy. We'll see also rain showers in the afternoon. Eldoret is mostly cloudy this morning at 16 degrees. We'll see highs of 19 and lows of 11. It's 22 degrees and mostly cloudy in Kisumu. Highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's going to be a wet afternoon in Kakamega with highs of 23 and lows of 14. Mombasa experiencing light rain showers this morning. It'll be partly cloudy though later on, highs of 28 and lows of 23. We'll take a look into Malindi where it's partly cloudy at 27 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Kampala is partly cloudy at 21 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 18. In Dar es Salaam, 23 degrees and partly cloudy, highs of 29 and lows of 21. Johannesburg is warming up ever so slightly, 6 degrees, highs of 18 and lows of 2 with sunny conditions all through today. Lagos, Nigeria is cloudy this morning at 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 29 and lows of 23. In Paris, it's sunny at 17 degrees. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 16. Mostly sunny conditions in London. Highs of 25 and lows of 16 today. Getting around to Thursday morning in New York, 23 degrees. Clear skies is what will be experienced. However, the summer will be dampened with rains in the afternoon. However, they'll see a high of 34 and lows of 23.
How do we fight the stigma associated with COVID-19? Fitting what you're saying, we need to have communication that goes to the grassroots.
Actually,
and this is structured communication.
I actually jumped the gun there because, you see, for any form of communication of this nature, whether you're calling it health messaging, and for it to be appropriate, you actually need to understand what that community that you want this message to go to considers to be appropriate. What do I mean is this. I'm simplifying it. I mean, it may sound like I'm simplifying it. It's because I'm simplifying it. How do people treat diseases? When you mention age in a society where people respect old people, when it is a good thing during the school holidays for children to visit their grandparents, when it is considered a place of honor that people who are respected are in place of honor like the church and circles and cattle dips and so forth. When you come in and start saying that this particular age group of people are at most risk, and then there's a rider that these are people you shouldn't really be in contact with. See, what you're doing is you're changing social norms. So how do you send this message? I would argue that the people who you want to actually deliver this message, they must be age appropriate. Meaning people telling these people who are older, that message should be people who are around about their age. That message will be received better. If you're talking about people who are slightly younger, again, age appropriate. People whose voices they will listen to more. It'll be the same message, but the manner and the person who's delivering or the group of people delivering it are people who will ensure that that message is received better. One, if they belong to that age group, they will understand the nuances, the norms, and the things that you should communicate. If you mix it up and take an older person communicating that thing to a much, much younger person, the messaging may be good and lovely, but it will not be received quite the same way.
It's why experts in communication have always done things like using, for example, survivors of rape to speak to people who then have gone through rape, because they have an experience the same as that individual that they're speaking to. So the communication then is clear, one to the next. Same thing was used in HIV, that they started to use those who were living with HIV as communicators of this message.
Call them peer leaders.
Right. So, peer leaders, peer counselors, because then they could speak to this reality.
Very directly.
Directly.
There's no theorizing.
So it's not something that would be out of the scope of somebody's understanding, because here you are looking at a living human being who has gone through the same thing that you're going through, or would understand the fears. So somebody who is of an older age with COVID would understand this, the fears, would understand some of the factors around them getting COVID, coming from somebody who's of that age, to say, look, I understand the medicine of it, I understand the science of it, I am also in the same age range, so this is what essentially could happen to us, as opposed to somebody who is far removed from it and is just giving you the facts and throwing those facts at you.
In fact, you may share even the same ailments because of the age factor. So your communication, and usually they'll have known, so and so akona sukari, so and so akona nini. It's considered normal. Now, how do you bring in a conversation of COVID and minimize stigmatization in this context?
I know that because I can even see comments, and I know that there are people who say, but you know what, how do we expect the messaging to be so clear? How do we expect the messaging to be so clear over such a short period of time?
No.
That's the thing about the communication, though, is that because look at something like HIV and AIDS. It has gone over time. right?
By the time we started dealing with stigma in HIV,
Yeah.
how many years down the road?
Exactly. Very long period
Yes.
of time. The problem, though, with COVID is this thing is moving very fast. The rate of infection is very high.
It's not only that,
Yeah?
but you see there are lessons learned. Prior to HIV, we had nothing of that magnitude. Nothing. This one, magnitude, manner, mood, again, we've never had it before. But it isn't as though we are completely blank with regards to an epidemic.
Right. There's no...
There's something called lessons learned. Yes.
The lessons learned can be... But what...
How long would it take to start applying those lessons, though?
As
Right,
I
so
said,
here we are. We are at what month? Month 4 of COVID in this country. At now approaching 15,000 cases of COVID. But everybody in the country knows about COVID. So first of all, information about COVID and how COVID is spreading and what you need to do to avoid COVID, that has already gone out. Now it's the second phase of, all right, so with all that information and also the truth and reality of the fact that all the information we're giving you is not all the information. We don't know everything. It's what we know so far. There's a lot more that we still don't know. Even when you're explaining this is how you can get it, there's...
you're fighting with what we call myths and misconceptions.
Yes.
Because people also have their own idea of what they think COVID is.
They're also, trying to come up with their own stories and their own theories about how COVID is spreading. How soon can you roll out this counter information that will fight stigma?
Well, I think...
I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, this, by the time we start dealing with that stigma, this is going to be a year into COVID.
Eric, when you asked the question and I answered it appropriately, you can't put a time and say a month, 2 months. No. What you can put or what you can state with some degree of finality is what needs to be done. The government started very well by training people.
Yeah.
But then there's a second phase of ensuring that healthcare workers were actually kept safe. You can't have a situation where healthcare workers also now become a target of people. They're becoming the group of people who actually spread the disease because they are not well taken care of. Because if you feel that, and there's news that healthcare workers are also getting infected, you're not going to convince people very easily that they should go to healthcare facility unless they're really very, very sick and there's nothing else they can do. So there are these gaps that must be fulfilled, meaning the hospital is safe, number one. There's a facility for this, yes. Any project, any process that involves dealing with something like COVID or any epidemic, it is never one thing, it's multi-pronged. You train people, you train health workers, you train lay workers, you train community leaders, you train youth leaders, you train church leaders, you train everybody. Anybody you train opinion leaders, others listen to. That's how far it goes. If you don't go that far, then it doesn't matter how much time you give it. You're never really going to you won't even make a dent.
We talked about the fact that, okay, fine, if you want to look at the machinery with organs that can push out this kind of information, has too many balls up in the air, right? There's so many other things that are going on. Communication of some of these things just seems to have taken a wayside. It's just, okay, we'll tell people and that's it. But unfortunately, for something that is evolving as rapidly as this is, the communication also needs to evolve just as quickly. And it means paying a little bit of attention to it and saying, all right, we are going to make sure that we do this. And what that means is that how do we get, okay, just as a question, how do we get on a global scale the new information that is coming out about COVID? Somebody's communicating it, right? Somebody is packaging it, putting it out there, right? I think the same mode or method of communicating some of these things can be adopted locally in different countries across different platforms. It's something that in many cases is simple to do. Yes, it might have some kind of economic impact where it needs some money to be able to have it done. However, it is possible to do it. Now, if we are pushing out messages, for example, that if somebody was COVID positive and they took time to get well and they did a test and the test came out negative and they did another one after 24 hours and they're actually fine, with scientific pointers to that, and we're putting it out there, small snippets of information that
Finish that statement.
Huh?
So they were COVID positive, then they went through 2 tests, and now they were COVID negative as of the last time they were tested.
And small snippets of information was put out kind of the way in which it was done with HIV. if that small little bit of information, so you know, just the way they told us that it's possible for you to live with HIV 10 years, 20 years, and you were fine, I believe that same kind of information can be shared. Because, like you said, in your mind, whether this person has been declared negative or not, as far as you're concerned, they're positive for everlasting.
Yeah, and there's no scientific proof to show that this person is not. We haven't gotten to a point where we have said that just because you tested negative yesterday, you are negative today.
You know, it appears like COVID also has a window period.
Because we do have people that have been reinfected.
Yes.
Yeah, there is proof of that.
So it becomes very difficult to actually start spreading the communication that, okay, this person is healed, stop avoiding them. Because you're saying avoid everybody.
You know, the safety
if the messaging is avoid close contact with everybody, maintain at least 1.5 meters distance with everybody, then that's what you're going to do.
You know, they're not telling you not to meet people.
No. They're just saying that you don't keep distance.
Keep distance.
Yes, and telling you wash your hands regularly. Challenge there, running water not there, blah, 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 blah. But, see, everything around COVID, if you think about it from the very basics, it's not an impossibility that you're talking about.
Nope.
No. When I looked at the figures of the amounts that they're saying the Treasury has released to jumpstart, then I look at what has happened to that money.
It would have been easy to do some communication.
You know, you actually start feeling a little unwell.
Not for real.
No, sincerely. You want to ask, do these people not think that this COVID is actually real and it's killing people? What do they think they're doing? And I'm sure they have some reasons. You know,
It's 9:30. We want you to participate in this conversation. 0719-012-600. What's the best way of fighting the stigma associated with COVID-19? In fact, also just give us your experiences, what you've heard in your community. What is it that people are saying about COVID-19? How is stigma manifesting in your community? 0719-012-600. 28 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a look at the traffic.
All right, traffic hour is officially over. It doesn't look like we have too many issues now. We still have that problem though on Langata Road, and this is an offshoot of what is going on from Magadi Road today with that accident that we've seen there. We're going to take a look outside of the NMA for now, and on the Mombasa-Malindi highway this morning. For anybody who's plowing that route, there's been a nasty accident there, and so it seems to be fatal, and waiting for police or emergency services to get into that area. So if you're approaching that area, please be very careful, inbound or outbound. That's the Mombasa-Malindi highway. Nasty accident that has happened there this morning, so it's going to affect traffic in that area for now, and waiting for emergency services to sort that out. Okay, so coming off Thika Road, coming off Mombasa Road, and other major roads within the NMA look good, guys. Not so bad as it was about 2 hours ago, so it's better. In the evening is when we'll clog up again. You can always send us a message here and let us know if you're stuck somewhere, and we'll spread the word.
Cases associated with the stigma of COVID-19, mainly in the community. We had last week the provost of the All Saints Cathedral, Reverend Samuel Naina, who had tested positive for COVID, underwent treatment, came out, tested negative, and he gave us his own personal experience. Even going home to his own family, his wife and children, they were not sure how to treat him. They were not sure. Okay, so
we stay away from this guy.
Should he be wearing the hazmat suit in the house? How do we engage with him? Neighbors and friends, when he's just out and taking a walk, and somebody's saying, "Yes, Reverend," from far, just to send a message that we don't want you to be close. We've seen other messages. Somebody tests positive, goes through the process, tests negative, they've recovered from COVID-19, going to a bank, friend at the bank knows you, and that's a teller, and you're just going to, and the guy just takes off. I mean, you have had COVID. There's a fear. There's, trying to understand the teller and why the teller would move back and take off. What exactly is happening?
Eric,
healthcare workers, you go to a hospital and you have these symptoms of COVID-19, and the first thing
all these clever people whom we're reading about, who seem to think that the fastest way to cure COVID is to stash money that's intended to help alleviate it. This contributes so significantly to stigma that it is difficult to believe. Let me explain what I mean. Stigma is not just what we think and feel, but also what we know. If people know, for instance, that when you go to a hospital, any hospital in this country, you are likely to get the treatment you need, the fear element will be reduced significantly. If healthcare workers know that they are protected and they need not fear coming into contact with people who are COVID positive, again, you will reduce the stigma significantly. If the money that is intended for all these things, you're actually being informed that this money has been stashed away, are we in competition as to determine who is clever enough to keep money in the bank? Any fool can keep money in the bank if the money is given to them. These aren't infractions. These are crimes against humanity. And anybody who's involved in such a thing, I'm going with this one here, these are people who should be arrested and asked to give account as to why money which is intended to actually help the many citizens who have, because this is not just money for hospitals. No, it's money for the mtaani cause, for the wazees, for those who are disabled, all this. You're telling us these people don't need the money. You're telling us there's no need. The people who released this money had done the maths and figured out, this is what we need.
This is actually what we need. And
we may require some more. The truth is we may even need more, but this is what we can do for now.
Yeah.
So who do you have beef with?
Who don't I have beef with?
I'm wondering. I mean, what is this? What are you talking about?
If we didn't have money at all, I would say, we don't have money, so we're trying to. But when you're actually told that there is money, and then every little bit of information that you read around COVID, we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have enough of this, we haven't received this. And then you read that there's money stashed in bank. How exactly do you react, Eric?
What is stashed in banks?
Let me read for you, because clearly you're having problems reading.
Please.
Only 13.3 billion of the 156 billion released to jumpstart the economy in March has found its way into ordinary Kenyans' pockets. The rest, 143.4 billion, has been stashed in bank by rich individuals and corporates. I'm just reading. Yes.
Okay.
And I always preamble my statements. If I'm to believe that this thing is true, then my friend, we have a problem.
That's just the headline. Now, if you got deeper into the story, you are left wondering, so where are the broken chains here? The CS for the National Treasury says, well, it's because of various factors, uncertainty around investment climate. This is talking about the money that has been not released in terms of cash. It's in terms of the VAT refunds.
So you're saying the headline is misleading.
The story as you read it here, where billions to fight virus are stashed. This is not billions to fight virus.
It's stimulus packages essentially that was helping out, right?
Yes, but HIV was not only a medical problem, it was also an economic problem, but nothing on the scale of COVID. So when you talk about stimulus package, has that money gone where it should go? Has it?
Yeah. So what are the reasons why it's not going where it should have gone?
Let me ask the question.
Is
this headline misleading?
Have
we been lied to?
That is where
I don't think we've been lied to.
That's where the issue is. I mean, where it doesn't explain.
Or are we saying that this money which we are reading and we are being informed was released was never released?
Money has been released. Money is in the system. So
which system?
It's in the banking system, the financial system.
And what's it
and then
doing
from
there?
that point, from the financial, how does it go to
Where it should be
to
released
where
to the
it should be
people.
released?
Yeah, but we already know where it's supposed to be going. Are we saying that we are releasing money and yet we don't have a mechanism
if
for
people-
ensuring the money does what it's supposed to
If
do?
an organization gets VAT refunds, it decides what it does with the VAT refunds. Now that's where the story comes in.
This entire amount of money isn't about VAT refunds.
It's about such kinds of things: VAT refunds, money that's paid, pending bills paid to companies, such kind of monies.
Yes, Eric. It is money that is intended for a purpose which it is not being used for. So is it really that complicated? It's a fraction that has been used, and we are clear about why all these things. The government reduced its VAT. It reduced all these things were so that there could be money in the system to ensure that this battle was being fought on all fronts. And I'm saying the battle isn't being fought. I'm saying the government did its bit. The money is there clearly in the system, but not in the system of the people who need it.
Where I'm leading with this is that this government has not done its bit.
All right, you explain that one to me so that I can understand it.
If, for example, an organization is getting this tax relief so that it can help its workers, right? And then the organization has held on to the money without taking it to the workers, the government should have ensured that money actually goes to the workers.
So essentially it's useless then, because if you're saying, okay, we've released it to said entity that should then help the people and it doesn't go anywhere, then you might as well not have done it.
What was
Because
the
if
whole-
they're holding, what was the whole point of doing all of that?
And we
if at the end of the day, the
discussed this.
people who should have received the money have not received it.
When the stimulus was announced, we discussed this, and I was raising the questions. How do you ensure that a company that has now gotten the reprieve of income tax, right? We are increasing the liquidity of that company. How do you ensure that that company actually continues operating and does not shut down and say, oh, you know what? It's better for me to shut down with this cash in here so that I wait and see how things are going. That uncertainty that Kuriatan is talking about, ensure that uncertainty is not the issue. We wanted you to continue operating, and we're coming to see, are you operating? Do you still have your staff? Did you lay off your workers? We were doing this so that you don't have to lay off your workers. That's what I'm saying. Well, yeah, the government did stuff on paper. The government did not follow up.
How do we know they didn't follow up, Eric?
Because they're not saying that they followed up.
Well, this writer, the person who wrote this story, probably the one who hasn't mentioned it. But we really don't know, do
The
we?
money is in the system.
It's in
You
the
just said.
I've understood that it being
And
in
the
the
question
system.
asked to Ukuri Atani, he says, we have done all these things, but because of various factors, and those factors he mentions here are, this he told the Standard yesterday include uncertainties around the investment climate, which is forcing banks to take a wait-and-see approach, and a reduction in the cash reserve ratio, which has freed up 35 billion shillings into the money market. This will go on for a month or two, and then the banks will start lending to the private sector. So it's basically it's saying, let's just wait for the wheels to move. You know, they have cash. They wanted to lend it to the government. The government is not borrowing so much. They'll realize that the government is not borrowing. So now they'll come and lend to the SMEs. By that time, SME folded up a long time ago.
Done.
Went
Cannot
to
even be
shags.
helped.
They got their money immediately. The government did not wait 1 or 2 months to release that cash. Cash reserve ratio, pop, it's overnight. Should have followed up with, so overnight, we expect you to lend this money.
I'm still not sure that the government hasn't followed up. I'm still not sure.
Neither am I. I'm just saying all indications to me are that the government has not
You
followed
see,
up.
what this points to, if we're to go by what we've seen in this country before, is not that the government isn't following up, but what else is happening after the government has followed up. Remember, government here in this case are people who are charged with the duty of ensuring that certain things get done the way they get done. But with news of individuals in KRA having, a net value of some 800 million shillings and not paying taxes and other such stories, I would be justifying in saying that even if the government had unleashed its inspectors to determine this thing, it doesn't really tell us that we would be able to get the information we need. All we know is that money was released. Fact. The money is in the system. Fact.
And the money was not supposed to be in the system. Fact.
Yes.
The other fact is, if somebody had followed up, then the questions we'd be answering would be, We asked them to release the money, and this is what they have done. And this is the
I
action
would,
that
I
they
would
have
ask
taken.
it. I would ask it
do
different. Can the government come and tell us what happened to the people they had released to actually check what was happening with this money? Because I'm sure they did.
It's 9:45. Let's take a quick break. And also, we'd like you to join the conversation. We'll bring it back to the issue that we're talking about, fighting COVID, right? The stigma associated with COVID-19. What's the best way to address this? It's there. It's in the community. If you know somebody who has COVID-19, what's your immediate reaction when you see them, when you meet them? And then how do we fight this stigma? Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719 012 600.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
How do we fight COVID-19 stigma in this country? I mean, from our communities. This is happening a lot. We'd like to know your thoughts about this. And also, if you can also share your experiences, how COVID has manifested itself. Stigma of COVID has manifested itself in your neighborhood, in your community. Just let us know. Elijah is calling in from Nairobi. Elijah, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
We're well, thank you.
Yeah, so about how to fight the stigma. The stigma has been started by those who distribute the information. So, initially the government was threatening certain things. If you are found with COVID, you will be detained at your own cost. If you're not washing hands, then you're going to kill your family.
Yeah.
So that sort of message and that narrative percolated down to Wananchi. And it will take an equal, if not increased effort from above to percolate downwards. So in the same way HIV had stigma, it took a very concerted global effort to destigmatize it. To the point that I think there's a movie where Denzel was starring called Philadelphia, where he was defending a HIV positive man.
Yep.
It went to that level for people to realize, oh, you can interact with this guy and it's not a problem. We may need that for COVID. The only thing that creates anxiety between HIV and COVID, if you consider the mortality rate of HIV is 90-something%. The mortality rate for COVID is between 1 and 5%, depending on where you look at it. The problem is the rate. How fast does someone die? That's what's causing the fear.
Yep.
But that being said, we will still live with 90-something% of people who are infected with COVID and are now stigmatized by it, which is not a sustainable society. So there may be need to start turning that discussion, and it has to start from above. Because if you say that you're going to have this discussion at grassroots level, and then from government you're being told you are killing your people, then the grassroots have nothing to say. They're not the ones in power. Yeah.
Immediately, if you were to start this campaign immediately, what would you start with? I mean, how would you shape this conversation?
I think there's one PR move that the government did where this lady who was in Rongai, our so-called index case,
Yep.
they brought her and did a presser, and it was sort of like we treated this thing. The fact that the high and mighty could interact with a erstwhile COVID positive patient was good. But I think more needs to be done.
So it should have been sustained.
It should have been sustained to let people know what does COVID positivity mean.
Yeah.
The country doesn't know, at least from a public health perspective, what happens to you after COVID. All we know is once you get COVID, you might kill people.
Yeah.
But there's a significant illness that follows having COVID, including long-term lung symptoms, long-term requirement for medical care. Now, a person who has lung injury due to COVID will not breathe normally going forward. Wananchi will just know this guy was COVID positive and he's coughing. He will not get the help he needs.
Yeah.
So we need to have a discussion that changes it from you have COVID, but what happens after COVID? That is nowhere in the news. That is nowhere in our public discussion. There is no forum that I've seen where people sit down and say, let us have a chat with COVID positive people and how are you guys dealing after the fact? First, because people will feel stigmatized. You may actually find faces being blurred, which is unfortunate.
Right.
But we need to have that discussion to show the humanity behind the disease.
Thank you, Elijah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
0719-012-600. How should we fight this stigma associated with COVID-19? He said something. I mean, that telling the human side of this story. When we saw our index case, the lady and the gentleman, people reacted and they started saying it's a PR move. But if it was sustained, if, for example, we saw, you've said that there is a case in State House, let's just see the people. Just tell us so-and-so in State House comes out and says, you know what, I tested COVID-19 positive, I'm in hospital, I'm undergoing treatment, it's now been 14 days, I've tested negative twice, I'm out. What would that help?
It would tremendously.
It would help.
If you also had these cases from all over the country.
Yes.
But it is after you've come to the TV, your life, how you live it.
Yeah.
And this is where the media comes in. What happens to you, people who then test negative after what? Take people through the process. This is how you normalize it.
Yeah. Geoffrey in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the awesome conversation you're having. Well, how do we fight the stigma? I want to say and encourage Kenyans to go to the worship places. Now that they've been open, I think that will be a solution to get encouraging message and word of God. Because already, those in the leadership have told us, because when you hear some counties are already preparing places to bury the dead just in case they are well, and body bags have been prepared, so stigma is not going to get out of our minds. So the only hope we have is from the places of worship and just listening to the word of God. I think that will be a solution for stigma. But from the other quarter of leadership and the medics, no.
No way.
And maybe we need also to be a brother's keeper within our own communities.
Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Willie in Kericho.
Yes, how are you?
We're fine, thank you. How are you?
Nzuri sana.
Tuambie.
Okay, I was trying to contribute to your topic.
Yes, go ahead.
You are actually starting from the stigma. You you need to change from the situation room to solution room. Because you are discussing the problem, not giving the solution.
We are discussing the solution. Actually, that's why we are seeking your idea of how to arrive at a solution.
So next time you discuss it with your authorities to change into solution room. One of the solutions.
Yes. What's your idea?
One of the solutions is the masking. You know what? Most of the people at the counties are not masking. You find out of the population, they are in comfort zone. That they say corona is like any other disease. So they are either masking below the mouth or not masking completely. So you find at least a quarter are actually the serious people. So you need to encourage people the importance of the safety measures.
How about how we treat those that have tested positive for COVID?
You know, it starts from the
I'm going to ask you a direct question, Willie.
Yes.
If today you heard that your neighbor in Kericho has tested positive for COVID-19,
yes,
how are you going to react? How are you going to treat them?
But in case I found my neighbor is positive,
Yep.
I need to isolate myself
Yourself.
after isolating him. But what counts is how you are exposed to him.
Okay.
Yeah. So to me, that distancing is important. Even to your kid who is playing to your neighbor, especially to Nduh Okoh. You know, at the moment, your maid in the house does not take care of your kid. So your kid goes and gets corona in your neighbors. And then you are comfortable looking for some shillings. Later in the day, you are going to have your kid.
So you should maintain distance even with your kid. Willie, thank you very much. We hear you, Willie. Sheldon Malala in Amboseli, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. The situation
Good
room.
morning.
Yes, I would like to take part.
Go ahead.
You see, whoever is to be blamed here, I guess whoever is advising the CS for health and the president, happened to stigma imeanzia. Mutai the other day just said, ati hii kirusi iko hapa, hii kirusi iko kwa hiyo mitaa yote. You see, sasa if you get someone from Kawangware, cannot visit that person in Donholm, anamwambia at Kawangware kuna corona, so definitely uko na corona. I guess we should have a good way of communicating this thing. Like, okay, guys, there is corona. We may prevent ourselves from this thing. One, you should do this and this. Put on your mask, and whenever you, by bad luck, umepatikana na hii kirusi, utapona. But the moment mnasema, don't go see your grandma, we shall go. The other day, my grandma at Awasi, aliniambia usikuje kuniona. Utaniletea hiyo kitu. I tried pleading with her, grandma, sina, but alikuwa ana insist, usikuje, tuma tu M-Pesa, you see?
Yep.
So I guess we should think of another way of doing this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sheldon.
Thank you.
Conclusion?
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, but one thing that's clear is that, the more it's talked about, then it's made more acceptable. More and more people are having this conversation to realize. I mean, just like he said, my grandmother said not to come. But you can imagine if the other side of the conversation took place, whereby, okay, maybe I don't pose such a danger to you, or maybe I do pose a danger. You know, if it's talked about, if it's put out in the open,
I
right
like
now it's under
the
a
fact
bushel.
that the grandmother was aware.
Exactly. You see? So people are aware in their pockets.
To me, this is some win-win in communication. That the grandmother is aware that, you know, I'm vulnerable and I need to ensure that I protect myself. Yeah. I think the issue would have been for Sheldon to actually realize and acknowledge that, yes, at this time, these are different times, I can send you something via M-Pesa and we can talk on the phone, but because I don't know my status, I'm going to avoid you.
Knowing the status is a good thing, and understanding the dangers, good thing. And then enforcing and ensuring that people understand that they should continue staying safe.
All right. Coming to the end of the show today, what's today's proverb?
There is no shortcut to the top of a palm tree. Essentially, there are certain paths that you cannot circumvent or go around. The path is known. It may be a little tedious, but that's the surest way of actually getting there. What we've been discussing, the surest way is actually to get you don't relent. Even when a vaccine is found, it doesn't mean it just means that's it. But
it's now 10 o'clock. When we get tomorrow, 6 we'll have more information. This is the situation. Dr Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Eric Latiff. Bye-bye.